Ladies and gentlemen of the interwebs, in a world hell-bent on unleashing a social media digital lynch mob against any minor transgression, whether or not it indeed even happened, the news of the weekend is of a tennis player, one named Rafael Jodar, who was excoriated within a series of a few hours for allegedly having violently shoved out of his way a lowly ball girl at a tennis game. The only problem, none of it happened. As we can see from the video here. Let me bring my, we're listening to faces over here. I want to read that tweet, which comes from I don't read that language. Translate this? Retry? Oh, it doesn't translate in incognito. Everybody, you've seen what went on yesterday. And I put out a car vlog about it, reminding everybody, it seems that, the collective wisdom or the memory of the internet, the generational memory of the internet, I've said it many times, is about 7 years. And yesterday, as this 19-year-old tennis player was being dragged through the mud, threatened with beatings, threatened with being kicked out of tennis because he shoved a ball girl, allegedly, even though he didn't. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this really reminds me of Nicholas Sandman. This really reminds me of Justine Sacco. And it's an amazing thing, actually. I didn't really appreciate the timing of these events. Justine Sacco, the woman who said, going to South Africa, hope I don't get AIDS, JK, I'm white, just kidding, I'm white, making a self-deprecating joke about, I don't know, whatever white privilege she thought she had in terms of living in a nation where AIDS and HIV is not a problem. That was 2013. And then about 6 years later, Covington Catholic kids, Nicholas Sandman smiling at Nathan Phillips, the valor-stealing indigenous elder, beating the drum in his face. And the internet, based on one photograph, claimed that Nicholas Sandman was a white supremacist smiling in the face of Nathan Phillips, and it was white privilege, white supremacy, racism, bigotry from Trump-supporting youngsters. 7 years later, we step into yet another internet lynch mob that wants to virtue signal how righteous they are, how thoughtful, how forgiving they are to the young ball girl who they thought got slighted by this tennis player, Rafael Jodar, when in reality, nothing happened. He didn't shove the girl. He didn't push the girl. He didn't approach the girl aggressively, but the moving target of people who refuse to admit that they were wrong goes that way. He had lost end of a round, trying to get out, threw something at his coach, which is his father, and then was going to the exit. The ball girl tried to get out of the way because they were crossing paths, trips on the tarp behind her as he gestures to his coach. The internet went crazy for the entire day yesterday. And you feel like at some point, you're the only adult in the room where you're like, hey, why would anyone shove a ball girl or a ball boy for that matter? Why would any tennis player physically shove a ball girl or ball boy who is there doing a pretty, difficult job? They got to stand up the entire game. They got to get the balls, stay out of the way of the players, don't distract the players. They've got a pretty tough job. Why would anyone think that the guy would have shoved a ball girl or ball boy? Probably symbolizes or represents a little bit more of their inner anger than anything Rafael Jodar had to say. He looks like a pretty decent kid. They take a 4-second clip, and there are a bunch of people out there who still haven't deleted their tweets, still have to show to the world that they are the virtuous ones, to threaten violence, to threaten expulsion, to threaten reprimands on a guy for not having done what they thought he did. And the mind is an amazing thing. Barnes always says, motivation is the master of reason. Once people have come to the conclusion that he shoved the girl, shoved her out of his way, you lowly little ball girl, that's in their mind, that's how they view the ball girl. Once they've come to that conclusion, nothing's going to convince them that it didn't happen. And if it turns out that it didn't happen, in order for them to rationalize their own mistake to themselves without just owning up to it, admitting it, and apologizing for it, they then have to say, oh, I thought he shoved the girl because he approached her aggressively. And that's where they go, well, maybe he didn't shove her, but he didn't acknowledge her existence. He got into her space. He approached her aggressively. The dude was approaching the exit to go see his coach at the end of a match, and it didn't look like it was going so well for him. But people in their own minds, they've got to defend themselves and their own ego. So they say, oh, I thought he hit her. And now that it turns out he didn't hit her, well, I thought he hit her because he approached her aggressively. Morons. And it's like, there's another one going viral right now where I'm watching this video of they're calling for the head of somebody who threw something at a baseball player. Let me see if I can find this one because I just noticed it going. I said, oh, we might have, right here. There's another incident that just happened today where people are calling for the head of whoever it is that hurt a baseball player. This one's like breaking, where you hear here. Let's see, you got Keith McPherson. I'm not sure who the person is. I'm not trying to put anybody on blast for no better reason. Host of Mike Check, Sports Talk, show content creator, model. Oh, let me see what you look like here. Hold on 1 second. This is a man or a woman? Oh, okay. Model. Who knows? Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. He says, jail, arrested, banned from all ballparks. This is where the lynch mob might be today. This video, which is going viral. A baseball player holding his hand because he got injured. Don't know what happened. Toronto Blue Jays. So apparently, not that anybody really cares about the social media lynch mob. This is the incident. A baseball player got hit in the wrist with something, and we don't really know what. But before coming to a conclusion as to a drunken fan throwing what I thought was a beer bottle at the player, you can see here he's talking to someone, makes a hand gesture with him. Hey, how you doing there? And then something is thrown at him and hits him in the wrist.
And then, something came onto the field.
And people are saying, ban this, arrest, jail. You know what it was, by the way? You take 5 seconds to look into it before reacting to a 12-second clip. Apparently, it was a young kid who had a misunderstanding with the baseball player. He had a baseball, and he was talking to the baseball player and said, the guy said, throw the ball at me. And the kid, who's a kid, threw the baseball, and for whatever reason, the baseball player turned his back and it hit him in the wrist, and it hurt his wrist, and he had to leave the game. Nobody learns, or at least those who learned the Justine Sacco lesson forgot by the time it was Nicholas Sandman. Those who learned the Nicholas Sandman question forgot it by the time it came to Raphael Jodar. And twice in one weekend, some people are going to say this is the manufactured outrage as a distraction to keep a populace submissive and, obedient. This is what happens when people don't learn from the mistakes of the past, or a new generation comes in. And my mission yesterday was to make people realize, don't rush to show what a virtuous person you are before knowing what the hell is going on. And if you think you understand what's going on from a 4 or 5 second clip, you're an idiot. And you need to be told that you're an idiot. You need to slap yourself in the face, as Robert would say, and say, I'm an idiot. I should take a step back before responding. People, how goes the battle? I'm going to give everybody the heads up. I'm using Rumble Studio tonight. I have been assured that the glitch that was causing the stream to cut immediately after we went to vivabarneslaw.locals.com and Rumble Premium has been fixed. I take responsibility for everything. It's what is it called? Jocko Wilnick. What does he say? Extreme ownership. At the end of the day, I take responsibility for everything, and I roll with the punches when people say boomer, tech issues. I've been assured that the glitch has been fixed. If it does happen to glitch out, I'm going to keep my phone on beep so that people can text me, and we will fire up the after party stream separately. But I've been told things have been a little glitchy. Locals, you've seen it last week. They don't know what it is, if it's a DDoS or something. It's been a little glitchy, and they've assured me they fixed it. Now, with that said, everybody, how goes the battle? Viva Fry, former Montreal litigator turned current Florida Rumbler. I wanted to start the show with footage that I got. We were at the beach today, and we're in the water. And we see a massive, it must have been 8 foot long, dark shadow cruising along the shoreline. And I'm like, oh, it's the tarpon. The tarpon are the things that you typically see there. Then I thought it's a shark. And then I realized it was a manatee. And I was running along the shoreline, and I caught up with the manatee, and I got some good underwater footage on my GoPro, but I haven't been able to upload it because I had to catch up on all the reading for tonight's show. I had to, do some parenting. We have our 5 o'clock Zoom call with my family. So we have our family calls every Sunday, and I'll get that up so that you can all see it. But we are live across all platforms tonight, people. This is the Viva Barnes Law for the People Sunday Night Law Extravaganza. CommieTube in the house, Rumble in the house, and vivabarneslaw.locals.com, the best, most above average community out there. And I'm just reading the chat to make sure that we are good across all platforms. Let me, before we get started here, we appreciate all the support, and there's no buts to that. Every now and again, I sometimes neglect or gloss over or do not read out loud some of the tipped questions or rumble rants or super chats. If you're going to be angry if that happens, I frequently say don't give one, because if it happens, I don't want anybody feeling miffed. Thank you for all the support. I do my best to get to all of them when we read all of the vivabarneslaw.locals.com tip questions, which we're going to do in the after party, because I think that's the way our community likes to do it now. And that's that. We've got one hell of a show tonight. And I think Barnes is probably going to come in when I'm partway through this, because Barnes said, you do E. Jean Carroll, and then I'll come in for the rest of the show. And I'm like, Barnes, do not say you do E. Jean Carroll. That's how you end up with a lawsuit in 35 years. I remember Viva Fry from the Bergdorf locker room. I say the only good thing about me potentially ever facing any accusations of any form of sexual misconduct, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen because people know a number of things. A, I'm a germaphobe. And in the actual material sense of like, yeah, I once sat on a toilet in a dirty place and I'm like, that's it. I've just contracted something that's going to destroy me. The second thing, I have a very, very vigorous philosophy that I try to impart on anybody who will listen with their big brain and not their small brain. Keep your schmeckle in your pants and don't be stupid. Stay married. You will stay rich. You will stay happy, and you will stay out of trouble. Go to bed. You don't have to go to bed early, but don't go out after 10 o'clock, because nothing good happens after 10 o'clock. And in as much as possible, try not to be friends with lunatics, and try not to cross paths with lunatics. It's difficult, but this is what Trump is going through now. You all know the story of E. Jean Carroll, a woman who I thoroughly believe is a lunatic, a crazy woman who is being exploited by the Democratic apparatus, by the man right here on your, do you see the cursor? Yeah. By a man named Reid Hoffman, who I'll thank Reid, gave me the best ratio, like one of the best ratios I've ever had. I don't care about the ratios. They're just funny when they happen under certain circumstances. And I got the best ratio against Reid Hoffman in a tweet that he put out afterwards pertaining to the news of the week. I still don't know what the actual true news is. There were reports in CNN across, say, legacy media, that E. Jean Carroll is under criminal investigation for having lied under oath as relates to who was financing her lawsuits, her lawfare against one Donald John Trump. Then the problem is that apparently from the news, the investigation, criminal investigation, is in the Northern District of Illinois, or in the state of Illinois. I'm not sure why it would be there. And then you have the official Twitter account of the Attorney General or the prosecutor's office of the Northern District of Illinois denying the existence of any criminal probe into E. Jean Carroll. The flip side to that is who would be conducting that criminal probe would probably be the FBI and not, the Northern District of Illinois. Set that aside. They're investigating E. Jean Carroll for having potentially lied under oath when, under oath, under penalty of perjury, she said that nobody else was financing her lawfare against Donald John Trump, that it was a contingency case. Here's a video that I put together that the internet seemed to have liked.
Another thing that he and his lawyers have often spoken about is the lack of disclosure about a big Democratic donor funding part of this case. Was there a reason it wasn't disclosed, and did you view this as political in any way?
Now, by the way, this is the aftermath. After she has been allegedly subject to a criminal probe, or at least after the news broke, she gets on Commie News Network, CNN, to try to start covering her arse. And she says this.
No, I just completely forgot that he even existed.
She completely forgot that Reid Hoffman even existed when this was a couple of years ago, but she conveniently remembers a changing room incident with Donald John Trump from 35 years ago. Horse crap.
Deposition?
Yes, in my deposition.
My team looked at it and thought that it was that her voice should be heard, that because she was challenging someone who's so much more wealthy and powerful, it shouldn't be squashed.
By the way, pause it here. This is Reid Hoffman, billionaire, Democratic donor. Listen to what he's saying, by the way, because if you go back and you watch some of the clips or some of the awards that were bestowed on Harvey Weinstein for his philanthropic behavior, it's the exact same attitude, the exact same mentality. It's the exact way that evil cloaks its evil through benevolence. This man, he just had to help a woman be heard because she would be crushed. And by the way, he says tortured in a second by a rich, powerful man.
And that, providing that voice for, people who are otherwise would be ground down by the system or the powerful is, I think, a good thing. Obviously, especially in the case of women, and obviously, especially in the case of sexual and other, torture and attack and
sexual torture. What a weird thing to say, even in the context of what E. Jean Carroll claims occurred to her, which was unwanted sexual advances in a Bergdorf changing room. Sexual torture coming from Reid Hoffman. Remember those words, and then we're going to get to the ratio.
And so providing that support was something that I felt very happy to do. Providing that support was something that I felt very happy to do.
One more time. Oh, yeah.
I just completely forgot that he even existed.
Now, in her testimony under oath, where she says this is a contingency case, and the next question was, so nobody's financing this for you, and her answer was no. What difference does it make? I've been asked. She lied under oath. So perjury either means something or it doesn't. Set that aside. This was lawfare from the beginning. Clear as day to anybody who understood that. But the amazing thing, and I talk about, a ratio, the ratio of all ratios. What's his face? Reid Hoffman goes into what might be described as something of a meltdown, something of a methinks the man doth protesteth too much. Let me go up here. I like that. That meme is, hey, everybody, come check out my ratio. It's Anchorman. Comes out with a five thread tweet about how Trump was found liable, basking in the fruits of his lawfare financed judicial corruption. I mean, he can't take credit for the ruling. That he has to give to Judge Kaplan. Judge Kaplan, who basically read into a jury verdict that which the jury verdict specifically said no to, that no, even though we find that he sexually battered E. Jean Carroll, he didn't rape her. And then Kaplan, the judge, has to come and say, well, technically under New York law, he did close enough so we can adjudicate him a rapist so that the headlines can run with Trump as a rapist. Reid Hoffman, $7 million well spent. He goes into this whole thing here about Trump was found liable for sexually assaulting E. Jean Carroll, defaming her, and now he's going after her again. Trump cannot be allowed to use the full weight, pun intended, and power of the U.S. government to come after women who speak up, yada, yada, yada. I just asked one question. Mr. Hoffman, sir, is this you on Epstein's Island? And let's see, that one got 928 reposts to his original, which got 1.7 thousand. I don't think he answered. Let me see. Did he answer? Oh, and then people are like, well, if a picture, look at pictures with Trump and Epstein. I was like, this is the problem with people who, low IQ, don't compare comparables and don't distinguish differences. If you find a picture of Trump getting a deep tissue massage from one of Epstein's alleged victims, I will judge him as harshly as I judged Bill Clinton for that. If you find a picture of Donald John Trump on Epstein's Island, I assure you, I will judge him as harshly as I judged Reid Hoffman for being on Epstein's Island. But it is very amazing that it's the one who comes out there protesting the most. He's doing it to defend women. Somehow, for some reason, was on Epstein's Island. And by the way, not for nothing, I know I talked about it last week. What the hell is the statue going on behind here? Did you guys notice this? What in the hell? There you go. This guy noticed it. What in the hell is that statue? It looks weird, people. If it looks like a statue of a woman breastfeeding a freshly birthed baby on Epstein's Island, it probably is a statue of a woman with conic boobies and a freshly birthed baby on Epstein's Island. And that is the intro for today's show. And now we're going to bring on the Barnes. No, Barnes, you're going to get equal size tonight. I love it. We still look equal size, but you are 6 inches taller than me. But this is the beauty of the internet. How goes the battle, good sir?
Good. Hopefully the technology's all working and will continue to work. It was a little bit kinky, a little emotional, as described in the movie The Good Thief. and the technology going a little bit in and out, a little bit of this, that, and the other. But hopefully it all works tonight.
You have not yet started crackling, Robert. I'll tell you. The chat will let us know when it happens. Let me read something from Le French, who just came in here. It says, last week you complained about a person being named Mercedes. It means mercies in Spanish, as in God's mercies. If you're named that, you're most likely a woman, and you're not named after a car brand. I thank you for that. I'm still saying no. If you name someone Mercedes in this day and age, you're naming them after the car. That's the origin of the car name. I mean, call someone a Porsche. I mean, I know that has, what did I just do here? It has other meanings. I'm being tongue in cheek. Thank you very much. Le French.
I just remember Volkswagen means the people's car. And I forget what party it was that helps establish that. Probably similar to the Tyson, the company, the big defense contractor in Nazi Germany, that just by coincidence sounds a lot like Tyson Foods.
Robert, what do we have on the menu for this evening?
Yes.
I mean, I can tell you, we're adding one to it, and that is Tim Pool being judicially, I would say, intimidated or compelled into canceling a guest. And I got some questions about that. Well, we're going to throw that one into it afterwards. What's the guy's name? I'm going to get the guy's name in a second. But do tell us what we have on the menu for tonight.
Yeah, so we got SCOTUS still sitting on the big cases. We've got racial jury selection. We've got racial redistricting that's going back up to SCOTUS after a panel decision in Alabama that reinstated the old district. We've got where arbitration intersects with interstate commerce. Where we're still waiting on is basically June is the last month. The only published opinion date currently is this week, June 4th. And we're looking at 26 cases that they've already heard oral argument on that they haven't issued a decision on. This includes we also got a range of other decisions, but this includes waiting on birthright citizenship, waiting on immigration, waiting on agency power, waiting on Second Amendment as to federal felonies, waiting on whether Bayer gets federal preemption and special immunity for its pesticide cancerous impacts and effects of glyphosate and the like. So a range of other major cases. When is voting day? What is campaign spending and coordination in light of the First Amendment? What about trans in schools? All of these issues are still yet to be determined by SCOTUS. So we'll do a pretty quick sneak peek on what that 26 plus cases are. We've got the Trump executive order on elections being not really quite upheld. It was basically that the challenge was considered unripe, using a standing doctrine to preclude it on mail-in balloting for U.S. Postal Service and on certifying citizenship list from the states. The Department of Justice, massive Maha betrayal as they come in on the side of the state of New York for allowing religious discrimination in the context of vaccine mandates by the state of New York. There's been a lot of misrepresentations about what the Justice Department is doing by taking at face value some of their public statements in the brief, ignoring the legal intent and legal consequence of that brief. We've got corporations given the right to vote, at least in Delaware. We've got the IRS Trump fund already being enjoined by a federal court in Virginia, and the case reopened in Florida. We've got the rights of recusal in California courts being reconsidered for when you can do it on a blanket basis. The Second Amendment, more litigation in Virginia as Virginia decides to try to ignore the prior decisions that limited its laws in Second Amendment context. We've got when do you have a litigation privilege and an exculpatory no or self-defense to a libel charge concerning a famous composer. And last but not least, we have Pam Bondi. Last but not least, we have Pam Bondi blames Todd Blanche over the Jeffrey Epstein debacle in a recent testimony in front of Congress, which apparently was done privately rather than publicly. So he didn't get a repeat of the Dow over 50,000. And Tom Longo wants to be sued for libel and may soon get to be sued for libel as Tom Longo goes full loco. That and more on this version of Law for the People.
Robert, I noticed I was taking some proverbial poo-poo in locals because they heard the typing. If you guys heard typing, it's because I was on the wrong mic, and I've double-checked now, and now I'm on the good mic. And just to see if do you hear anything? You have to try real hard.
Yeah, now I don't hear it.
Okay, good. Sorry about that, peeps, and thank you for reminding me. Rob, but before we get into any of this, I'm going to add a couple at the front. You know what? We're going to deal with the weaponization, the injunction enjoining funding of the anti-weaponization fund. So everybody remembers now, or at least you all understand, that Trump, through his lawsuit against the IRS, entered into a settlement in his own lawsuit with his own DOJ. I think it was Todd Blanche who signed off on it, settling Trump's $10 billion lawsuit for unlawful disclosure, leaking of his tax returns. He sued for $10 billion. They settled for $1.776 billion, which is not going to go to Donald Trump, which was going to be set up or used to fund what is being referred to as an anti-weaponization fund. I might call it a weaponization fund just because because I'm going to forget. It's set up to compensate victims of government lawfare. And I think, most people are focusing on January 6th in particular as those who are going to make the claims. There were some issues. I know we talked about it, but I do want to just refresh everybody's memory. People were saying this isn't going to Trump, and Trump's lawsuit itself was time barred because I think it was not brought within the statute of limitations, or there was an argument to that effect. And to that, I say that that's fine in terms of, making it look like Trump is not personally benefiting from this settlement. The question I had, however, is if the suit was time barred, why would they even? It's going to add fuel to the corruption in terms of why they would even enter into this settlement with Trump's own DOJ, to the extent that, they should succeed on having it dismissed because it was not within the statute of limitations. Have I misunderstood the argument about the statute of limitations and how it applies to Trump's claim?
No, that is one of the issues, was that they had a relatively robust SOL defense because he had not brought this suit until he was president. And even then brought it a little bit late and didn't bring it right away. There was always issues with the president effectively suing himself. And the federal court raised that precise question, that there didn't appear to be a truly adversarial proceeding because they had not assigned any independent counsel to defend the Internal Revenue Service in a case which I think the IRS did violate Trump's rights under both the statute and the Constitution, and thought that the point and purpose of the litigation was just to get a declaration to that effect and an injunction against the IRS doing that in the future. And that anyone else could piggyback and intervene in the case down the road if they were being victimized in the same way that Trump had been. I represented over 60 million Americans whose medical records were illegally seized by the IRS. I also represented a range of Tea Party folks that were illegally targeted by the IRS. Both of those happened under the Obama administration. Represented so-called tax protest groups during the George W. Bush administration. Because they were targeting them for what appeared to me purely political purposes when there were civil remedies available to litigate their claims about whether the tax laws were being properly and constitutionally applied. However, that's not what happened. What Trump decided to do instead, as soon as the federal judge was like, what's the point and purpose of all this? You appear to be on both sides. Did a secret settlement, rushed to do a secret settlement. Tried to strip the federal court of jurisdiction over the settlement and the case, and then publicly announced where granting immunity to Trump and his family concerning pretty much everything tax related, and we're creating this 1.776 meant to be like 1776 amount for weaponization, but no limitations on how that could be used, to whom it could be used, the process for applying for it to be used, not giving it a judicial control by saying, okay, these funds are going to be paid into the court for the purposes that meet these explicit and strict standards. And so it led to blowback on the Hill and blowback publicly after it came out, because people were like, why is the president cutting himself such sweetheart deals? Why is the president not excluded from this so-called weaponization fund? Is it truly a weaponization fund when the January 6th defendants and a range of other people have not even been interviewed by the Justice Department, and the Justice Department is still pursuing certain harassment of them in some cases to this day? And then on the Senate became concerned, and in the House they became concerned in the broader context that there's allegations, credible and plausible allegations of corruption concerning Trump and his family on insider dealing, giving special contracts. Came out this week. One case we talked about before, which I said was suspicious, was this huge contract given to monetize a company not long after by the Pentagon, not long after Donald Trump Jr. got a substantial ownership interest in it. Well, now it's come out that in fact that contract was circumvented the normal bidding process and was forced through by the White House itself. So the all these stories of massive corruption where the Trump family is self-enriching and self-dealing with the federal government taxpayers put this settlement in a different light. And that's where there's now public controversy, judicial action. 2 different judges have enjoined any use of the money at this point. One, the judge that presided over the original case, is reopening the case for consideration about whether the settlement can even be done. And then another judge in Virginia enjoined it pending full litigation and full briefing on the case. So it looks like this is blown up. Maybe it's just due to the incompetency of Todd Blanche, who was the only one to sign off on any of this. Maybe it's due to the corruption of the Trump administration, or maybe it's due to overzealous actions by legislators and judges. But this is not the last we've heard of this case.
The issue, I'll just operate on the basis that they're not going to use it for any corrupt slush fund purposes. And it's an assumption, and we'll operate on that assumption to avoid, the diverging argument here. Assume that it's going to be used for bona fide lawfare. The Jan 6ers, a number of them who, they got screwed, lost millions of dollars defending themselves. Some of them spent time in solitary confinement. Assume the ends are justified, proper, and not corrupt. Is the issue that this could be argued to be bypassing congressional approval? It's Congress that controls the purse strings, right? That's the expression under civics law.
Yeah.
So Congress controls the purse strings, and the argument's going to be, if you want to set up an anti-weaponization fund, put it through Congress, have it be debated, etc., assuming it all goes to good purpose. And that would be assume all else is proper. That would be the legal argument that this is basically just bypassing Congress for the purposes of funding something that otherwise ought to go through Congress, correct?
Yeah, well, that's part of it. Congress is objecting. Now, I mean, they have the power to settle cases. The Justice Department. The question is whether this is being, and there's certain funds they can allocate from within that for those purposes. Federal government settles cases all the time that doesn't require congressional approval for those settlements, typically. So now, if you look at the local level, usually the city council is required to approve certain things, settlements of major cases. But generally speaking, Congress is not required to authorize a range of settlements. They're asserting their authority to control the purse strings by trying to revoke the funds from being available to be spent for this purpose, using their power of the purse in that way as almost a veto, if you will. The public embarrassment might lead Trump to do so. But they what is indubitably the case is the Trump administration failed to set the groundwork for this in ways that would gain confidence in the House and the Senate and broader public.
And this is not to criticize for the sake of criticizing. This is, if they had a neurotic, Viva in their room, it's like, you can't have Todd Blanche sign off on this. Just on its face, it looks like there's a conflict of interest, or at least, not insider dealing, because it's not going to go to him. It just looks like this is a sweetheart settlement deal that's no skin off anybody's back, because it's done by Trump's own, not just his personal lawyer once upon a time, the interim AG.
People keep claiming, this is just for the January 6ers. There's a separate January 6th lawsuit. They could settle it to set aside the funds for just that way. They have refused. They are fighting that lawsuit. They are seeking dismissal of that lawsuit. So anybody pretending that a penny of this will go to January 6ers is in denial, because that mechanism is already available to them and they're refusing to use it. So this is clearly for Trump's whoever he wants to give it to. It becomes a de facto slush fund. That's why there's no limitations on it, no restrictions on it, no conditions on it, no judicial oversight on it, and it's not being joined with the other January 6th and lawfare victim cases. I represent Robin Gritz in a case against the FBI. There's a whole bunch of FBI whistleblowers who are already due cash and really do more than that. CIA whistleblowers, IRS whistleblowers. They have various cases, either at the administrative level or the judicial level. None of them were joined in this case. So there's clearly no intention to give any of them any of this money. Now, after Trump got caught is when he said, it's for the J6ers. Then why aren't you selling that case rather than fighting that case?
And I would argue, why not try to, I don't know, pass some form of legislation to actually formally right the wrong of January 6th? But so set all that aside now. The concerns about a slush fund, concerns about corruption, even if it goes to bona fide use, the argument that they're bypassing Congress, the argument that they're ignoring the statute of limitations so that they can create this. There have been two rulings now enjoining its funding and enjoining any spending. Has the 1.776 billion been constituted yet, or it hasn't even been funded?
No.
Okay. So that's what's going on with that, and interesting. And I guess we'll follow it. What do you think? If you make a prediction, I'm inclined to think it's never going to get funded, and he's going to say, "I tried," but as it will enter into some declaratory judgment for the violation of my rights.
Well, again, he's got other ways to do this. Just don't do it through this process because it's blown up and backfired. Look at the cases already pending at either the administrative level or the judicial level, like they settled the General Flynn case, like they've settled some other ones. There's a bunch of January 6ers who have sued. Just settle that case and use that case to create the settlement fund for the J6ers. And that's clearly within his legal authority. Very difficult for Congress to overturn or overrule, and no one can accuse it of being a slush fund because it's under that court's control as part of the settlement process. That's how they could do this. There's a legitimate legal process already available to them to provide remedies. I'll give another example. They want to give remedies to the vaccine injured. They can simply use the Brooke Jackson case pending with the Justice Department's involvement before the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. Brooke Jackson has already agreed to give away her entire interest in the public portion of the fund, not her employment litigation case, but the big one where she could be entitled to hundreds of millions of dollars. Give it all to people who have been vaccine injured. They could use that to tell Pfizer, settle this. The federal government could come in and step in and help create that funding as well under the circumstances, since they were the ones that did it through the Defense Procurement Act to do the COVID vaccine in the first place. They could come in and say, we're going to set aside these funds, settle this case. Pfizer's going to have to give something. Maybe the government gives something as well. And the funds, 95% of the funds, go to the victims of vaccine injuries. This is available to them. They're just choosing not to use it, choosing not to do it.
I brought up a chat. I'm not going to give any more. I noticed a name, and I think I remember some directed comments last week without putting any more blast on potential trolls. The argument, Democrats do this all the time, or Democrats do it all the time. I saw you get into it with somebody on X where, basically the argument was, Hunter Biden did this, he got away, or he got away with it. He did it. All the Democrats do it, insider trading, enriching their family. And people say, well, the Democrats did it, and Trump's been persecuted, so somehow this, we'll let it slide. To which I say to the gentleman says Democrats do this all the time. A, Republicans and conservatives and MAGA are not supposed to be as low as Democrats. A. B, Democrats will go after the Republicans, the MAGA, anybody who does this, because they weaponize the system when there hasn't been any breach of the law or any flirting with the law. Imagine what they're going to do if they can actually hang their hat on something where a judge doesn't have to hang his hat on a novel theory of disgorgement to order Trump to pay $500 million, but can actually hang his hat on objective improper dealings. And your defense is going to be, well, Democrats do it, and we all know that. And there's differential, disparate treatment under the law. And if you want to walk yourself into the problem, keep using that stupid defense. Democrats did it. Hunter Biden did it. So why not? Stupid. Okay. Interesting. We'll see. I think, I don't think that $1.776 billion fund gets funded. Maybe get a declaratory judgment that other people can then use in their own lawsuits as an exhibit. What were you going to say?
You see it. We're supposed to have this great 250th anniversary of the American Revolution of 1776, and have a great celebration in D.C. and across the country. I had hoped that we would go to different places where seminal patriotic events occurred during the American Revolutionary era. I got, family ancestors pretty much at all of them. So, in one capacity from Bunker Hill to Valley Forge to elsewhere. Excuse me. So I thought that'd be great. And instead, it looks like the president's going to cancel it all so he can give a 3-hour speech about how great he is. I mean, this shows that the guy's lost it. I'm sorry, he's doing things that make no sense. But I mean, how even Matt Walsh finally came out of his little cubbyhole, which he'd been in ever since during the Massey campaign, where one of his favorite congressmen is under attack, and Matt Walsh was busy hiding, saying, "Whatever you do, don't give me raw milk. That will destroy me," with his raw milk obsession. But even he came out and said, this looks terrible. We're not going to have a real celebration recorder. That's going to be Trump just speaking forever. I mean, it shows you how people around him are not giving him common sense advice. That say Todd Blanche won't stand up to him at all. And say, let's at least do this differently if this is your goal or this is your objective. It's not just corruption, it's incompetency. And saying, hey, don't worry, Democrats are also stupid and corrupt. Congratulations. We were not supposed to be the same. Supposed to be different. The Trump coalition and the Trump presidency.
Here, let me bring up Matt Walsh's tweet. Was in response to, you really can't imagine a better way to celebrate our nation's 250th birthday than listening to Trump give a speech for the 10,000th time. Not sure I believe you. At any rate, America's birthday should not be about Trump. He isn't the star, the country is. And now he says here, a Trump rally will be Trump talking about himself for 90 minutes. Having that as the main act for our 250th would be ridiculous and sad. To which Sean Farash had to reply, another swing and a miss from Walsh. I mean, if you're looking for more than just a Trump rally for America 250, that's fine. They tried that, but the cancel culture mob forced several artists to withdraw from the event. So the president, if he wants to, will host a rally and bring the energy because he's the only one who stands up to the radical left. Ridiculous and sad isn't how I'd describe it, but to each their own. Maddie flip-flops will likely be on other side of the issue soon, as he is well acquainted with both sides of the fence. It's first of all, fireworks. Okay, there's no greater. Maybe they're going to do it anyhow. Fireworks.
God bless Sean, but he's a little cultist. He's a cultist. Dear leaders say, I must do what dear leaders say. I can imitate dear leaders, so I will do what dear leaders say. He looks pitiful. He looks sad. He looks like the caricature of the Trump movement. This is ridiculous. We do not do our 250th anniversary, so an ego freak with an ego of a toddler currently, waging war overseas that he won't settle and resolve because of his toddler mindset and mentality, wants to make it all about him. He's building 50-foot statues of himself in the Trump library. When does Trump world wake up? Do you all want to end up being Trump tards? Dear leaders say, I must do it. Or do you want to have some degree of principle, some degree of independence, some degree of simple competence?
I reject the notion that you could not find bipartisan musicians, people who would willingly and good ones at that. Fine. Nobody wants to hear Bruce Springsteen anyhow. I suspect you could probably get Oliver Anthony. He would sing. You get some good country music. You get some good country musicians who are bipartisan, who love country more than the Democrat or the Republican Party. There's no question about it. But yeah,
we got to quit excusing the stupidity that you can love Trump all you want. This is stupid. This makes him look bad. This makes the party look bad. This makes the country look bad. And if Trump said it, it must be perfect. It must be godlike. It must have come from Jesus. It's Moses coming down from the mountains. These people look pitiful. I mean, can people like Sean have a single criticism of Trump? Can they do one? Are they even capable of it? I mean, not to pick on Sean, but this whole Trump world. I mean, these people aren't even the cat turds of the world, can't voice a single criticism. They'll contradict themselves within the same day like Trump does on the Iran war, whether we're going to get peace or not. But they can't even voice a single criticism. They look like a joke, like a dear leader cultist joke with no independence, no sense of principles, no sense of ideals, who are easily for sale or will do whatever dear leader tells them to do. They have become the caricature like Trump has.
Robert, Lindsey Graham, people, that's your boy. You have to support him. You have to support immunity for glyphosate manufacturers. You got to support the jab. You got to support, what were some of the other bigger ones that I think we can all agree.
We'll get to one right here. The Harmeet Dillon, the Civil Rights Division, promised to do meaningful protection of against religious discrimination. And all those people whose rights were violated by the vaccine mandates by governments and private employers alike. She promised that there are over 10,000 complaints that have been filed with the EEOC concerning religious discrimination in the COVID vaccine mandate context in particular. She has taken up, I think, 2 of them. And now the state of New York, which had all the most overt attacks on religious rights, saying you have no religious objection rights to the COVID vaccine mandates, no religious objection rights to school vaccine mandates, imposing this on the Amish, imposing this on other people, something that Harmeet Dillon promised to take action on.
Robert, like not to cut you off, just to highlight that, Kyle Seraphin, among other FBI whistleblowers who were reprimanded for not taking the jab, are still fighting for their back pay for what they were denied by virtue of the fact that they refused to submit and take this experimental shot. Like, people we know have not been compensated. I do want to ask you though, when you say I'm going to play devil's advocate and at least ask the question, if the fault is that she's only taken up 2 cases of however many hundreds or thousands, is it the argument that those 2 then become the precedent for all the others, or do they actually have to take up all of the individual cases in order to achieve justice individually, as opposed to getting the precedent set so they can apply it to all the other cases?
The other cases, they're not establishing any precedent with it. They're getting low-level settlements at against a local facility, like a low-level, politically unprotected participant kind of player, like a local school system or something like that. And it sets no precedent at all. They're not getting any policy precedent. They're not getting any legally enforceable precedent. They're not doing anything in any of these other cases. And now what makes it more egregious is they have a case going up to the Supreme Court to challenge this. Children's Health Defense, Aaron Siri, others have been bringing these cases to try to challenge Maine, New York, California, trying to erase religious discrimination as a grounds for reasonable accommodation from a vaccine mandate, whether in the employer context, public or private, or the schooling context, public or private in some of these cases. Because some of the cases they're saying you can't even do private schooling, you can't even do homeschooling without being forced to take this long list of vaccines, many of which, like the COVID vaccine, are not even really vaccines. And so, because they don't inoculate under a traditional mechanism of defining a vaccine. And so, what does the Justice Department do? So not only is Harmeet Dillon completely AWOL on all these EEOC cases pending potentially before her office, but now the Justice Department is taking the side of the state of New York, and they're saying good on religious discrimination on vaccine mandates. They're saying it is an undue burden to accommodate a religious objector. Because that's what happened in the state of New York. The state of New York, originally they passed a COVID vaccine mandate, but it had religious and medical accommodation exception requirements. Then they removed the religious accommodation requirement. And so employers said it's an undue burden because we're going to have to pay a fine if we give a religious accommodation. And the argument was this basically is preempted by the federal civil rights laws. You cannot treat as an undue burden under state law that which federal law prohibits. And here the Justice Department itself is saying, yes, you can. Yes, you can discriminate on religious grounds. Yes, you can make it an undue burden to accommodate for religious reasons. Yes, you can screw over the people who suffer from the vaccine mandates because somehow that complies with federal law, and because they've reinterpreted and reconstrued federal law to mean that if at some point somebody somewhere at some time could possibly be accommodated for religious reasons, then somehow a law that makes it an undue burden to accommodate for religious reasons is just fine under federal law. Complete betrayal of Maha. And it is what Harmeet Dillon has been on a court. Harmeet Dillon has betrayed Maha more than anybody in the Justice Department, and that's saying something. Because she advocated and campaigned that she would be part of that coalition. And instead, she's just obsessed with Israel. She has to check with the Israel lobby first before she can do anything for anybody else anywhere. She's mostly AWOL on DEI cases, mostly AWOL on other discrimination cases, mostly AWOL on other lawfare cases, AWOL on Dexter Taylor in New York in the Second Amendment context, AWOL for Kurt Benschoof in Washington in the lawfare family context, AWOL on Tina Peters.
Well, and Tina Peters gets out tomorrow by the grace of God, it seems, by the benevolence of Governor Paulus. You mentioned it. I know people are going to say, Robert, you've gone off the deep end with Israel. But you mentioned it, however, where if someone were, if that were one's political angle, whether you agree with it or not, it is interesting that Israel was the country that I forget who it was that basically admitted they experimented on their own population, allowed Pfizer to, they were among the most jabbed. It is interesting that if that is if you view that as being the potential political blinders here, it is interesting that you wouldn't want to take a position that would be adversarial to what was done in that country.
People can-
And also, sorry, go for it.
People can just go to Harmeet Dillon's X feed. One of every 3 X posts of late is somehow Israel connected. She's doing Fox News hits about Israel issues, about anti-Semitism on campuses. She even misconstrued what happened at UCLA. She thought at UCLA a bunch of Palestinians had raided an Israeli encampment and attacked a bunch of people, or pro-Israel sort of tent set up on campus, and attacked them. It was literally the other way around. A bunch of people on the Israel side raided this pro-Palestinian protest and attacked and assaulted a bunch of people. And she's leveraging the Civil Rights Division. You can see on her X feed, you can see in the legal claims, you can see on her media interviews. Harmeet Dillon is the one obsessed with Israel. I could care less about Israel. She's the one prioritizing every single day in the legal actions they filed, in the legal cases they get involved in the public cases she brings attention to herself. It's Israel, Israel, Israel. And people keep trying to conflate this with Jews. Again, a majority of Jewish Americans oppose what Israel is doing in Gaza, oppose what Israel is doing in Lebanon, oppose the Iran war. 90% of them oppose getting further involved in military escalation in the Iran war. This is not a Jewish issue. The number one leading advocates are Christian Zionists, not Jewish Zionists, in the United States, politically and financially in some capacities. This is about Harmeet Dillon herself has prioritized the Israel lobby for the Civil Rights Division over and to the detriment of, and now to the disadvantage of the vaccine mandate religious discrimination opponents. I have no doubt if it was a bunch of just Orthodox Jewish kids who are being targeted that would bring the attention of the Israel lobby, that Harmeet Dillon would be all over it and would have the opposite positions he's taking before SCOTUS. Sadly, that's where we're at.
I love doing this just so that I don't think I'm going crazy. It was Benjamin Netanyahu who admitted, this is a quote from him, I just had to double check it, that Netanyahu said, "I described it in my book, My Conversations with Albert Bourla of Pfizer, and I persuaded him to give tiny Israel the necessary vaccines to get us out first from the COVID." And here, go down here. But statistically, what does it do to people with meningitis, yada, yada? So Israel became, if you will, the lab for Pfizer, and that's how we did it. We gave the information to the world, and not only it's been published in medical magazines and so on, that's the database we have. So he admitted, and this is where people say stupid things, but I don't trust any government, specifically Netanyahu, because he admitted back in the day he effectively used the Israeli population as guinea pigs so he could submit the data to Albert Bourla of Pfizer. And I'm not going crazy. Okay, well, so meanwhile, Robert, what is the undue hardship in terms of the accommodation out of New York? This is cases where people were fired for not submitting to the jab, working remotely, or did it get that egregious in New York, or was this one, if you want to work in office, you got to get the jab, and we're just not recognizing religious exemptions?
What happened is they interpreted that if they accommodated a religious objection to the COVID vaccine, so these were nurses and other people that worked for the state government, city or county or state government, and the state passed a rule that basically revoked religious accommodations and said that if you give accommodations based on religious reasons, we can fine you. So when someone made a religious objection, and again, they were allowing medical objections, which under controlling Supreme Court law, if you allow medical objections, it is discriminatory to not allow religious objections on the same grounds. That's been well established. This Justice Department doesn't care. This Harmeet Dillon doesn't care, is taking literally the opposite position they've advocated for their entire professional careers and say, yes, you can discriminate on religious grounds where you couldn't on medical grounds. But what here was the only defense the governments were asserting for firing these people and discriminating against them for asserting a religious objection to the COVID vaccine was the fact that they asserted a religious objection. They said, you asserted a religious objection, we'll get fined if we accommodate that. So it's an undue burden for us to accommodate that. That is precisely what even the Biden Justice Department acknowledged was illegal under federal law. So to give people an idea, the Trump administration is going a place even the Biden administration refused to go. That's how bad this is. That's how egregious this is. That's why Aaron Siri, the number one advocate against vaccine mandates, along with myself and the entire country, came out and outed this from the get-go. And all the Trump tards came up with 100 excuses for why it really isn't what it obviously is. Like the people are saying, well, we're not in a war, but if we're in a war, it's a good war. But don't worry, we're not really in a war after all. It's a war that's about to settle. And if not, we'll go back to war.
And it's not a forever war because it's only been now 5 months. I mean, it's not a war. Strategic strikes.
It might be scheduled for 2 years, 4 years, 10 years, 20 years. We don't know where it'll end, but that doesn't make it a forever war. It has to actually be forever before you get to the war. Ha ha. I mean, it's that kind of ridiculousness. But this is one of the most outrageous betrayals of Maha in this entire administration that has had many of them. Robert Kennedy is the only one doing any good work for Maha in the entire administration. You know, Brooke Rollins has gone AWOL from the Secretary of Agriculture. Promised a lot of things, hasn't delivered on any of them. Basically it's just Kennedy, and most of Kennedy's staff is getting sacked. Why? Because the head of FDA says we shouldn't be pushing vapes on kids for big tobacco. Big tobacco goes down to Mar-a-Lago, makes a bunch of big donations. All of a sudden, the FDA, McCarthy is kicked out because he won't play ball to go into business with big tobacco, with their vapes harming and hurting kids. They have sacked almost everybody else that Kennedy had tried to bring in. Robert Malone is gone because they were waging war on him. They produced fake and false polls to circulate around the White House to say being against these vaccine mandates or being against the COVID vaccine, that's a bad idea. And Trump was eager to embrace that. He was like, yes, I am the great author of the COVID vaccine, the great rescue. He's back to that again in the White House. So the people pretending otherwise are just in La La Land. I get it. It's a more convenient and comfortable place to be, but it doesn't make it any closer to reality. This administration is systematically betraying the rights of people of religious objectors on vaccine mandates, and the New York case is just the latest and most egregious example of it.
I didn't realize that Robert Malone resigned from his role as vice chair of the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, ACIP or ACIP, in March. He did not serve on the Department of Homeland Security. I just put the DHS. I didn't realize. So Malone's out.
In the committee, by the way, yes. And the committee is back to recommending the COVID vaccine.
I want to bring up this just to remind everybody when we talk about religious exemptions and those who did not recognize them. Just refresh everybody's memory on Justin Trudeau.
The intent of these measures is to ensure that anyone working for the federal public service, that anyone wishing to travel on a plane or a train, be vaccinated. And exemptions, whether they're medical exemptions or otherwise, will be exceedingly narrow, specific, and, to be honest, somewhat onerous to obtain.
It's just amazing that, Robert, it's tough not to get blackpilled, but this is effectively now the status quo, at least with respect what's been established now in America.
Yeah. I mean, at least with this Justice Department. And so, to another example, they call in Pam Bondi this week, and they let her testify privately, the same way they let Howard Lutnick testify privately about his previous lies about his involvement with Epstein and his connection and role with Epstein, much like Reid Hoffman. Nerve to go around and lecture people about sexual propriety and how he's the great defender of women, except when he's at Epstein Island, as Elon Musk has pointed out repeatedly, as you were pointing out to begin the show. The Pam Bondi's excuse for why a whole bunch of things didn't get done was twofold: to blame Todd Blanche and blame Kash Patel. Said, and Kash sent me over all the files; they were already redacted. I was saying from day one, the FOIA people at the FBI are unreliable. They're untrustworthy. They're deep state gatekeepers. They're contaminating the files. They're misredacting the files. They're withholding certain things, including other things that outside of context are incorrect, and bamboozling the entire administration. But because the Epstein files implicate the donor class, because they implicate the intelligence agencies, because they implicate MI6 and Mossad and the French intelligence, they decided to keep a lid on it. But here Pam Bondi is saying, I really wasn't handling it. I never even read any of those documents. We said at the time that her answers suggest she never read the documents. So she lied to the American people when she said she'd seen it and she had only child pornography in the video files. She lied when she said she'd reviewed it and there was no implications of anybody for a conspiracy. Same with Kash Patel. Same with Todd Blanche. But what she's admitting now is, I never read or reviewed anything. And it's all on Todd Blanche and Kash Patel, and ask them why they did what they did.
Well, I'm telling you, like, this is. Let me play the clip, and then I'm gonna qualify it with what's this guy's name again? What's his name? The guy who's talking.
one of the Democratic members.
Yeah,
of the House,
the reason why I didn't believe it is because this guy's a liar, and a proven one. But I had to double check that what he said here is in fact true, because even liars are accurate sometimes.
It is clear in just this part of the interview that she continues to push all of the
I think Jamal Bowman might have pulled the fire alarm in the back. Okay, bada bing, bada boom. Sorry.
investigation and the blame on acting AG Todd Blanche. She said, and I quote, "Acting AG Blanche was managing the entire investigation," end quote. And what you're going to hear in that interview, and what she's saying here in her words and remarks, is that it was Todd Blanche, the current acting AG, that was leading the Epstein investigation. And quite frankly, all of the mistakes that we saw, the redactions, not protecting survivors, she continues to push that back onto the acting AG, Todd Blanche, who, by the way, was Donald Trump's former personal lawyer.
Robert, I've got to bring it back. So, even liars can tell the truth, but sometimes I'm trying to see what people say his name is. His name is not Fidel Castro. His characterization of what she is alleged to have said now behind closed doors is accurate. Back in the day, I said, Bondi is so incompetent, it surpasses the threshold for incompetence. It's like fractal wrongness. If she wanted to sabotage Trump, she wouldn't have done anything differently. If she wanted to sabotage Trump, Robert, she wouldn't say anything different right now than to throw the current interim Attorney General, Todd Blanche, under the bus. If she wanted to save the Trump administration, she would assume ownership over this, because she's no longer even in the administration. I thoroughly believed back then, and I believe it now, and it's becoming more and more confirmed. She is trying to sabotage the Trump administration, and there is no better way to do it than by not assuming ownership over that bungle, and to throw Todd Blanche and Kash Patel under the bus as they currently sit there. I think she would have thrown Bongino under the bus if he were still in there, which is why I think Bongino trying to save, trying to aid the administration by not throwing Bondi under the bus, because I chalk this all up to her. No good deed goes unpunished. Those who were silent or tried to protect through silence Pam Bondi are now getting thrown under the bus by Pam Bondi when she's out of the office and she can't suffer any more consequences, and she's making Todd Blanche look like a corrupt buffoon.
Yeah, and the other factor was Bondi stood by or facilitated purging so many other people, and then the few that remained that were conscientious, like the general counsel at the Treasury Department, the others within one of the former J6 defendants himself suspects wrongfully targeted, that was himself a lawyer defending J6ers, left the Justice Department. So once they purged Gail Slater out from the Antitrust Division, it meant to be everybody knew that was on the lawyer's side of the equation in anywhere outside of HHS that their days were numbered, and that they would either have to resign in protest so that they wouldn't be associated with some of the corruption that was incoming at scale, or that they would be purged and kicked out. Tulsi Gabbard gone, Joe Kent gone, Amaryllis Fox gone, Michael Anton gone, Gail Slater gone, everybody that was a reformer at the Antitrust Division gone, the former J6 connected lawyer that was at the Justice Department gone. You've got a handful of people left that are true believers, and they are mostly isolated and marginalized. And you got the president leaking to the New York Times various nasty personal attacks on his own vice president for standing up to him and suggesting the Iran war was a bad idea, and continuing to give him exit ramps that the president blows up. So it is what it is. I wish it were differently, for sure. I didn't spend a decade plus professionally and personally sacrificing for Donald Trump to see him take this heel turn that he has, this rug pull that he has. But pretending it isn't happening doesn't make it any better. Denial is a place that is not a good place to live for very long without causing harm to yourself.
It should remain a river in Egypt, as my mother would always tell us growing up. Mr. Mike over in our locals community correctly identified it's Robert Garcia. He's a liar. I mean, I know that guy. If I go back and look at my tweets, I know that I've gotten him, but it doesn't mean he's lying right now. It's egregious, Robert. And it's so wild. You would do the exact opposite of what Bondi is doing right now. You would take ownership over it, and so that there would be no blowback. I mean, it's effectively, everyone can blame Bongino as much as they want. It's what Bongino did when he left. He didn't throw anybody under the bus in the administration. He sat there and he took his lumps by a community that wanted him to throw people under the bus. And I said he wouldn't do it. He didn't do it. He took his lumps. And now Pam Bondi comes out and she throws the current biggest two in Trump's admin under the bus. Patel thinks he's wooed over the Trump derangement people at the FBI. They're going to politically get him at some point. It's a matter of time.
Yeah, no doubt.
Okay.
Now speaking of crazy actions, we've got some crazy courts action this week, and to give you an idea of the future, the Delaware courts have said not only are corporations people too, but they have a right to vote. That's right, corporations in Delaware have a right to vote for local elections in certain contexts, it was all about the definition of person. Remember the Supreme Court years ago, corporations are people too. So, no, they're not. They're legal fictions. That's what they're called legally, fictions, created as a privilege of the government to avoid liability for the bad things people do in their name.
Yeah, but Robert, nobody would invest in no one would invest if they had personal liability. So you have to set up the corporate shield so that people can invest and you would flourish the markets. Before we get there, however, let me I want to bring up two here because one of them was on point and the other one wasn't. Le French says Harmeet Dillon was on Michael Malice's You're Welcome podcast claiming she was cleaning house over there. Any reality to that, Robert?
She started out but didn't replace them with anybody conscientious. And she herself at lead has focused I know from people that are there. She's focused the entire civil rights department. The prioritization is anything Israel connected. Make it anti-Semitic or Israel connected. It right away goes to the top of the line. That's just reality. What's happening in the civil rights division?
I just want to see when she was on because that's not.
That's
totally
probably old.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna give me 1 second here. If AI, Robert, is good for one thing, at the very least, it's pulling up dates faster than I could. It was May. Oh no, it was May 27th.
Oh, so it must have just been on.
Yeah. So I'll do because I haven't. The episode is titled "How Harmeet Dillon Cleaned House at the DOJ Civil Rights Division." It's essentially an in-depth, jaw-dropping
So
conversation.
a whole bunch of people left correctly because she put in better policies that were on the woke side of the aisle, but she didn't replace them with her own. And half the department's still empty, and she has now chosen to prioritize things that are completely the opposite of what the Trump 24 coalition was all about.
Well, and now I know why you thought it was an older episode, because in the early days of back in March 2025, we were talking about the fact that Harmeet was in fact clean. She was rearranging and forcing out the TDS staff from the Civil Rights Division the same way that RFK was doing it, and Tulsi was doing it. That was a long time ago. Then things sort of went off the rails since then. So I'm going to listen to it, but I suspect any reference to getting rid of the old folk is going to go back to mid to late 2025 and have nothing to do with what's going on in the present. That was Le French. How did this one just kind of? Oh, Robert, this is from Winora. What do you think about the issue that Trump could be liable for income tax on the 1.766 billion settlement fund as the initial beneficiary of the payment?
Well, that's why he covered himself on the other side. He's completely immune, and the IRS is prohibited from even investigating and examining it.
But it would. I don't think it would count as income to him.
Normally it does. Normally, the way that's set up, normally it does.
All right, now
that's why they shouldn't have done it out of that case. They should have done it out of a different case where the actual plaintiffs are present. But again, that was a giveaway that this wasn't about helping victims of weaponization. It was about Trump being able to help his friends and screw over anyone that doesn't bow and doesn't take the knee to Emperor Trump.
Robert, let me just clarify this right here. The chat comment from Lupek says Harmeet Dillon posted on X, Bondi never blamed Blanche. Barnes is lying. First of all, we just literally listened to the guy who was there say it. So Barnes is not lying.
Right.
And
it's come out in multiple sources that confirming what he said. So what do you think Harmeet Dillon is going to say? Is she going to say that her current boss just got thrown under the bus for the Epstein files?
I wish people would.
Barnes, you don't understand. The great Trump has spoken. He overrides what's in the Bible, Barnes. He overrides. He overrides it.
I want people to stop using the word lying, because even if you just stop using the word lying. We literally just played the source here. If you don't believe this, we'll go to the Hill. All right, the Hill is relatively. I think it's more centrist. Bondi points finger at Blanche in House interview on Epstein files. Don't come in here and say that Barnes is lying, you idiots. Okay, you want to say he's wrong? Say he's wrong. You want to say that Diego is. What was his name? I forgot the other guy's name. Sanchez? No, Diego Sanchez is the UFC. You want to say that guy is lying? Fine. You want to say that everybody is lying as to the reporting? Fine. But the people that are doing nothing more than relying on the reporting because we weren't in that meeting are not lying. So stop being an idiot. Okay, I apologize.
Yeah.
Robert,
And people got to quit with the, if you second guess Israel, you are anti-Jewish. Once again, Israel is not about Jews. Majority of American Jews oppose Bibi Netanyahu. Majority oppose their wars in Lebanon, Gaza, and Iran, and Syria. So this isn't about Jews. This is about a foreign country. Quit equating them with an entire group of people who refuse to be seen as synonymous with them. It's an insult to Jewish people around the world to equate them with Bibi Netanyahu. Heck, it's an insult to rationality all around the world to be equated to Bibi Netanyahu. So quit trying to do it as a way to run cover as that's the woke right? When you're you can't second guess something or question a policy without being racist. You're part of the woke movement. And the biggest champions is what's his name was, the guy who created the woke right label. He was describing himself. That's who he was describing, not the people he was criticizing.
I'm going to bring this one up, Robert. That is Flop Peep says Barnes calls everyone a liar. Okay, by the way, you think Barnes didn't hear what I just said? Like, Barnes calls people liars. He's a big boy. He makes his own decisions and he picks his own fights and maybe, gets.
There's different kinds of lying. There's lying about sets of facts. There's lying about what you yourself believe, and then there's differences of opinion. But different people. It's just people that are in these different bubbles. There's bubbles on the left, bubbles on the right, and we see examples of it in not only the Delaware, where the judges are convincing themselves corporations are people that have the right to vote, even cited the constitutional provision about that. We got a range of cases that are fit racial redistricting that's somehow back because judges live in their bubble and don't think the SCOTUS just said what they said. But yeah, we can take our pick as to get other bubbles to pop.
No, but the corporations getting the right to vote, Robert. I'm curious about the logistics. How do they determine how many votes a corporation gets? Is it based on income, market capitalization?
Yeah, that's where it's going. That's where it's going. Yeah, so Delaware, basically a local community, said non-resident property owners could vote in their community. And the corporations then claimed that they could vote because they had property in that local community. And the problem was the Delaware Constitution requires free and fair elections and only allows persons to vote. And the question became, are they people? The famous Supreme Court line, corporations are people too, which is such a crock. They're by definition not. They're there to help people stay immune from things. The explanation, the policy rationalization and justification is that it helps raise capital and makes the economy more efficient over time. But going further back, it was just a chartered privilege of the king to incorporate, yes, I give you this corporation privilege so you can go out and screw people and steal stuff for the king. That's where it originated from. Before it adapted into its modern formulation, which is that you get special immunity from liability for your bad acts. As long as you're part of a corporation that does so, it limits your liability to the shares and equity of the corporation itself. But the idea that they're people is just, and you can imagine how out of hand this could get, how quickly it could get. Real democracy is when the corporations vote. It's like the old Chicago joke that they're out registering voters. And this young kid asks the guy, goes, do we have to keep doing this? And he looks around and says, son, would you deny any of these people the right to vote? As he points to the rest of the cemetery. Now we're just going to make corporations that privilege. And it was astounding to interpret free and fair elections. If you know the history of that, it was meant to make sure it was honestly representative of the voter's intent and the voter, to a degree, the voter's interest. That they have a well-informed, it's almost like an informed consent model that legitimates government. Go back and read the Declaration of Independence, the Thomas Paine Common Sense and other documents that went into the philosophical foundation of it, Thomas Jefferson's and others, and George Mason's and others' explication of it. And it will all come back to the idea that the only legitimate government is the government that we have consented to govern us, because the power starts with us, doesn't start with them. We vest the government with the power that we are given by God and by nature, and nature being God's creation in that religious part of the philosophical tradition. And here, That's what's being, is that our consent, our informed consent is what free and fair elections are supposed to be about. That's completely foreign to the idea that the government can create an artificial entity that now can replace us as human beings in the electoral process. I mean, it literally turns all of the foundation of our governance and country on its head. Yeah, that's exactly what a Delaware court did this past week. And you can guess they're testing out how far they can take this.
Well, I mean, you presume this will get to the Supreme Court if it gets past the appellate level of Delaware, but this is the same Delaware that was getting involved in the what did they do with Elon Musk? This is the same state that told Elon Musk that he couldn't govern his own corporation the way the shareholders wanted.
Exactly. So sooner or later, it'll become a true privilege of the state. And now the idea that the state-created privileges can decide who governs the rest of us. I mean, it's such a contorted, distorted inversion of constitutional principles and philosophy. But it's not the only one, because we also had federal courts this week. You think, hey, the Supreme Court comes in and says, no more assuming racial discrimination is the motivation for a redistricting. If there's any political rationalization, that ends the analysis. Partisanship by itself suffices as even if it's pretextual, as an adequate justification for redistricting that cannot be reexamined by a federal court. What does a 3-panel federal court do? Because these voting rights cases have these unique federal district court judges assigned as a panel of 3. They come in and say, nah, that's not what the Supreme Court meant. And as they said, this was clearly racially intentionally discriminatory by the state of Alabama to create this one district. And they went further. My favorite logic was, you know what the proof was? Here's what the proof was, that their motivation was intentionally racially discriminatory. That they didn't racially discriminate. Because you're like, we told you had to have 2 majority minority districts, and you only have 1. So that proves you're out to be racially discriminatory. It's like, hold on a second. You're saying the evidence that I'm racially discriminatory is that I wasn't racially discriminatory? Yes, of course. Welcome to logic of the federal courts.
But Robert, at what point, I mean, we saw this happen with state courts just thumbing their nose at Supreme Court precedent, specifically in the Bruin decision. I mean, I know this is federal court in Mississippi, or is this state?
In Alabama, and because Voting Rights Act cases are assigned this unique panel of 3 federal district court judges. So people think it's an appellate court. It's really not. It's its own court, and that decision goes right up to SCOTUS. Okay, and it's already there. SCOTUS is going to decide whether this is a violation of what they just decided. I'm assuming the answer to that's going to be yes.
And then what's the repercussions for judges that openly and overtly defy Supreme Court precedent? They say, well, run it back up, and everybody else has to pay for this so that we can. They
only will get impeached, or President Trump will only call for their impeachment if they stop the Kennedy Center from being renamed the Trump Kennedy Center. Then that's grounds for impeachment, by golly. But, it's screwing over racial redistricting, lawfare against all kinds of people, overt open corruption on behalf of the surveillance state, none of the undermining vaccine mandate discrimination cases because of their own institutionalized bias. None of that matters. It's, you take my name off the Kennedy Center? Impeach. Mm-hmm. Welcome to our current White House.
Hey, Robert, all good guy says, Barnes, stop already. I use the corporation as a person to justify driving in the carpool lane when I'm working.
I used to have a huge, big, stuffed monkey, and I used to stick it in the back of the car, and so I could drive through the carpool lane in California. And if I ever got pulled over, and they said, "Look, you're only a single person in this car," be like, "George is sitting here in the back." And if they say, "Sir, that's not real," I'll be like, "What? Are you denying George's existence? George's right to exist?" I had a whole line of defense just to see how it would work. Luckily, I only got pulled over once. And that was while I was smoking a cigar while speeding in the carpool lane. And it turned out to be too many violations for the
Robert, at the risk of pulling, I have to do it. I saw the comment. I can't pretend I didn't see it now. This is one Patriot Deb who says to Sean Patrick, "You won't ever get Viva to back away even 1 inch from defending Barnes. No matter what, there's something much deeper there than this audience knows." First of all, it's called friendship and loyalty. I know it's a very bizarre. First of all, the premise is wrong because I often correct Barnes, fact check Barnes, and make jokes about how Barnes picking fights with people puts me in the middle of fights that I don't want to have anything to do with. But Barnes is a big boy and he'll live with his own consequences for fights that he picks on X. Second, there's something much deeper than this audience knows. I've known Barnes now for damn near 7, 8 years, Robert. I would trust Barnes to babysit my kids. It's called friendship. It's called knowing someone's a good, thoughtful, intelligent person. And yeah, that's the type of trust that builds over 8 years. So I remember the first one, Robert, when you made a Somali joke about Ilhan Omar a while back, and I made a comment like, ugh, and when I take myself out of the screen, when you're saying things, just people understand something. I know Barnes. I've known him for 8 freaking years. He's a good man. He's smarter than most. And something deeper, like what, corruption? No, it's called friendship and loyalty. People should understand what that is. And that doesn't also mean telling Barnes he's right when he's not. If I think Barnes is wrong, I'll tell him. And I'll tell him publicly too.
Well, it's a lot of confession through projection. A lot of these people are betraying their principles in ways that everybody can see in honor of a politician. They've chosen a politician over principle. They've chosen it to the world to see. And they will often confess that there's something deeper going on with Trump or deeper going on with them for their hypocrisy and the like. And it's just the nature of the animal. But, been here, done that. During COVID, got a lot of criticism by saying the lockdowns were dumb ideas. Got a lot of criticism for saying the vaccine mandates and the vaccines were bad ideas. Got a lot of criticism for saying Lynn Wood was Lynn-sanity. Got a lot of criticism for saying Sidney Powell had no Kraken in her that she was going to unleash on the world. They got a lot of criticism for criticizing the lawfare against Trump for people on the left. Got criticism for defending Israel. Got criticism for critiquing Israel. So, welcome to the party. You're going to get our honest, objective opinions. You can disagree with it. You might be right. We might be wrong. But it will be our honest opinions. They will not be bought for. They will not be paid for. They will not be betrayed for a politician or a party or anyone else. The only thing I've been sipping for all of my legal life is the Constitution of the United States, not some politician.
I know, and I love how people deal with it. Like, you say things that I disagree with, and what I'm supposed to disavow you, like, over the 25th Amendment, Robert. Yeah, I disagree with you on that. I don't think Trump is dementia ridden. We disagree. What am I supposed to do now? No, disavow him. You all are a bunch of fickle sycophants. Enjoy it. But Robert, one more I've told you that I think, maybe I haven't told you this. Whenever you respond to Patrick Bet-David, I wish it would be a little more diplomatic.
But he got himself in a little bit of trouble this week.
So I want to add this one. I want to add two, this one and the Tim Pool. Because I listened to CoffeeZilla, who I think I picked CoffeeZilla and I had a bit of a running into on X, and I don't remember why.
He was a real prick about, in my view, making false accusations against Alex Jones. He misunderstood Alex Jones, and that may have been what it was about. A lot of his other stuff, he's very insightful. Exposes a lot of fakes, phonies, and frauds out there. CoffeeZilla is one of the best at it. But sometimes you get a little bit of his ideological bias when he goes after people like Alex Jones. Like, dude, you got that one completely wrong.
No, and so he went. I mean, he went after Patrick Bet-David. Valuetainment has sort of gotten into a bit of hot water because they had a $1 million sponsor from a company called Goliath, and I think it's a known fact now that Goliath was effectively a Ponzi scheme of a guy, taking, I think, $500 million from investors who were promised 3 to 4% return monthly, which I don't know what that is. Is it safe to say it's 30 to 40% annually? So some exceedingly high, unrealistic level of return on their investment. It was a platinum or a gold sponsor at the last Valuetainment conference, which, okay, fine. It pays for
Vault. They call Vault or something like that.
That's right. Yeah. And so this Goliath, whatever it was called, Goliath Investments. It's called Goliath. Was the $1 million gold sponsor for this conference. Shortly after the conference, allegations were coming out that this is nothing more than a Ponzi scheme, and that the guy is basically squandering all the money that's been given to him, promising returns, and he basically, absconded with $500 million, and the company's bankrupt. And now people are going after Patrick Bet-David, criticizing him for having, publicized or I say promoted, but I'm not sure that that's a fair word, because promotion sort of means you cite with approval. But you bring on a sponsor and $1 million sponsor, you're not going to get much sympathy from people out there. The allegations, from what I understand, only came to light roughly at the time of the conference and shortly thereafter. This sponsor was brought on a month before the conference. And now, so CoffeeZilla publishes a 30-minute phone call with Patrick Bet-David. I listened to the whole thing. And, not to say that CoffeeZilla is a bit of a maybe showboating or being overly dramatic, saying, Patrick, give the $1 million back, even though this, it's going to go to a trustee now because they're in bankruptcy. And you promoted this company, so don't you have some blame? And Patrick's explanation, which I maybe it's because I like Patrick also, is, look, we didn't do a proper due diligence, go into the financials, but this was a company that had been around. The allegations of Ponzi scheme behavior only arose after they were already brought on as a sponsor, but after the conference, and we didn't know, and and it's a bad situation. Zero question of liability. At what point would there have to be active promotion of? Because we saw this with it was one of the crypto scams where some of the celebrities who were promoting it because they were paid for, they were sponsored, they got sued. And at the time I said, unless they knew this is a sponsorship, they're not expected to go do the due diligence and inspect the financials of their sponsors, though it wouldn't hurt to do it. At what level does the threshold for exposure exist as far as Patrick Bet-David goes? And what do you think? I mean, did he do anything? Were they playing, I don't know, fast and loose with sponsors, or is this just the risks of when you accept sponsors? Some of these companies are not going to be necessarily too wholesome.
I think the context for this is Patrick Bet-David's own business career. So Patrick Bet-David, from his family, I think is originally from Iran or part of Iran. And came here, I think, as a kid, if I recall right. And then served, I think, in the U.S. military. Then got involved in the insurance industry, started his own insurance company. And the allegations have always been, whether it was a MLM, the pyramid scheme kind of structure, has been the allegations that have dogged him ever since he started it and established it. He would say he was trying to give independent groups from underrepresented communities the opportunity to sell insurance within their communities and profit from that industry and not let it be excluded from them in terms of economic opportunity. His critics would say he designed it so that the money flowed to the top, that 99% of the people who participated did not make money. And that's the kind of pyramid scheme allegations that tend to dog various forms of multi-level marketing plans and platforms. Either way, he's sold the business, became fabulously wealthy, owns a portion of the New York Yankees, lives across from Lionel Messi when he moved from Texas to Miami, and then started his own podcast, built that up rather rapidly. There's some people that you might say are jealous of him. There's others that you might say are legitimately critical of him. It depends on your perspective. That as a podcaster, he grew so quickly. He's clearly a very skilled marketer, no doubt about that. Very smooth spokesperson. I don't personally find his a geopolitical analysis of much depth. I find it's not as dumb as Clay Travis or Dave Portnoy, but that's only because it's impossible to be dumber than Clay Travis or Dave Portnoy. And, it might be a surprise to the president of the United States that the word dumb has a B in it, but it isn't to the rest of us or to most Americans, God bless them. If there's things to talk about extensively in an interview, I would encourage them not to make that the focal point in the future, but we'll see. And then as Patrick Bet-David became a Trump supporter, that split more of the public reaction to him. And then his support for the Iran war has further split the public reaction to him. And so some of this criticism is filtered through that. I have, long said that I think he provides some independent utility and being willingness to provide independent media platform, but I've often said I don't trust his geopolitical analysis. And you can find me going back years being critical of how he made his money, that I'm still a little bit, I'm not sure if I'm going to take financial advice from you, Patrick. Other than, now I've defended people in that position. I think the headline in the local newspaper was Ponzi schemer or hard luck dreamer. According to Attorney Barnes, his defendant was just a hard luck dreamer. It was a little tough with the Ferraris and the Lamborghinis and the fake financial statements. And there's been no allegation that David has done anything like that. The issue here is he does these conferences that have like an MLM feel to it, and a little bit of motivational speaker kind of stuff going on. And that does have like televangelism history that even if there's people out there that clearly are doing it legitimately, you get the lunatics like the Paula White lady that screams scam artist. For 10,000 you can reach Jesus. For 100,000 you can get priorities with God. When I hear that, I'm like, I don't think your Jesus is who it is you're talking to. There might be a deity you're interacting with nightly, but I don't think it's from that side of the aisle. But so I think that's where some of the criticism comes from. And you're right, CoffeeZilla tends to be a little overexcited with how he does always the dramatic. Are you going to give the money back? Taking on the fraudsters. But that seemed to be an overreaction in this case.
Yeah, and it's not to it's not an excuse, but it's $1 million. Patrick Bet-David, I think his net worth is 500 to 600 million. It is. I would sooner believe there's a good reason why they don't just give the money back right now. There's an investigation going on. I didn't find any impropriety even listening to CoffeeZilla's analysis, and then to go after him and say, "But you've got Kalshi as a sponsor." I appreciate that you pay for these tables and you pay a sponsorship, and he's worth that, where you pay $1 million and it's advertising for the company. I don't, to say now he should be held liable for the wrongdoings of the companies who pay $1 million to advertise. The people who give that money to Goliath should be doing the due diligence with their own money. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
And legally, these guys are wrong. That when they keep attacking Kalshi and Polymarket as gambling markets, legally gambling requires a random game of chance.
Well,
these political markets are not random games. They are not playing it. They're not playing slot games online. That is not what is going on. So to equate them with an online casino is simply false. It's legally inaccurate. It's legally untrue. I get some people think of everything as gambling. That makes the stock market gambling. If there's risk involved, and that's your calculation for whether it's gambling, every time you get in the car and decide to drive someplace, you're taking a calculated risk.
And I do know people say, the stock market is legalized gambling. Gambling is, I made this argument in the thread on CoffeeZilla, and people are like, I said, gambling is, it's odds statistics. There's nothing you can do to change those odds. You can try to count and you can try to know where you're at.
Chance. But the legal terms in the United States, random chance. That's the combination to make it gambling. If it's not random chance, it's not legally gambling. So to call it as such, to treat it as such, to claim it as such is simply legally inaccurate in terms of understanding the law.
No, and maybe I say this with my own, not a chip on my shoulder, but my own defensiveness. You do your best when you bring on a sponsor. You want to make sure it's a good product. It's not, made in China to the extent you can avoid it. That doesn't have sucralose in it. You do your best. But if the idea now is you're going to be holding people liable morally, ethically, or try to do it financially for the wrongs of the people who sponsor their shows or whatever, I don't think that's a fair threshold. I didn't think it was fair with the Bitcoin or the crypto stuff. And I don't think it's a fair criticism of Patrick Bet-David. His explanation to get on a 30-minute recorded call with CoffeeZilla shows more transparency than anybody out there would display under similar circumstances. So I wasn't sold on the drama from what I saw from CoffeeZilla. Just wanted to run it by you to make sure I was not biased in my
personalities that got into some controversy this week. In a total shock, fence post master of the sitting right on the fence post, Tim Pool managed to get himself in a little bit of hot water despite his efforts to avoid controversy.
Well, let me bring it up. And again, everybody, I know Tim. I like Tim, so accuse me of defending Tim. And I had to double check that when he posted this, it wasn't intended to be satire, like canceled, but I'm going to have him on anyhow. So Tim Pool is going to have a guy on called Turtle Boy, Dr. Turtle Boy, who has been a vocal, is the word critic, who is floating hush-hush alternative theories as to who killed that Boston police officer, because I don't think many of us believe it was Karen Reed who was tried, and it was a hung jury, correct? She was let off on a hung jury, and then they were deciding whether or not to recharge her. And I don't know if they did recharge her. I should refresh my memory. Doesn't matter. Karen Reed, the girlfriend of the deceased Boston police officer who was found dead in snow, and she was not found guilty. And I have to double check that. I feel stupid. So Turtle Boy has an alternative theory that it was a cover-up by some Boston police officers. And he's been quite vocal about it. And he was going to go on Tim Pool on IRL last Friday. I'm not going to read the entire thing, but basically you have a letter from counsel, Koskoff, and Bider, And it says, Dear Mr. Poole, we write on behalf of our clients, Jennifer McCabe, Brian Albert, Colin Albert, Brian Higgins, collectively the clients, who are plaintiffs in a lawsuit currently pending in Plymouth County, Superior Court, Massachusetts, yada, yada, yada. What do we say here? We understand that you have scheduled Aidan Kearney, also known as Turtle Boy, as a guest. We write to bring attention to your matter, yada, yada, yada. Pending litigation. So he's being sued, the guy, for defamation, for suggesting that the clients are the ones who are responsible for the death of the boyfriend of Karen Reed that she was prosecuted for. They basically say this guy's been going around for a long time making overt accusations of criminal misconduct, criminal behavior of their clients, that they were responsible for the death, murder, cover up, whatever. And he's been doing it quite vocally. And now he's being sued civilly by those clients. And they don't say, do not have him on. They say, just, you could have him on if you want. But if he says anything on your platform and you don't push, I don't know if it was like if you don't push back as much, but if he says something defamatory on your platform, you're well aware of the law that says if you allow your platform to be used to promote defamatory statements, the platform itself can be held liable. And then they did, actually, I do want to bring it up because in their letter, they do say there are exceptions to this. And I'm not totally fleshed out on the case law on this. Here, hold on one second. What we are asking, and it says over here, in West Virginia, Crump versus Beckley. We're looking at the right thing? No, we're not, because I didn't put it back up here. Put it back up with your fat fingers, Viva. In West Virginia, Crump reaffirmed that publication to a third party is the operative act giving rise to defamation liability, and that all who participate in that publication bear responsibility proportionate to their involvement and knowledge. Okay. And then there's something here. They said there was an exception. Yada, 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 yada. Let's go down here. Go down here. Where was it? We acknowledge that platforms hosting live or real-time programming have invoked certain defenses in this area of law, but those defenses are grounded in the absence of advanced notice and the impossibility of meaningful editorial review. I presume that if you brought someone on to challenge their defamatory statements, it would be okay. Neither consideration applies here.
Their interpretation of the law is incorrect. It's an exaggeration.
Okay.
You might even call it
a lie. Lawyers don't lie, Robert. Come on.
Yeah. Instead of lawyers, it was meant to spell liars. Instead, they just screwed up the translation from the old Latin.
So the bottom line, they send that letter to Tim. Who the hell's Phil?
Dr. Phil, maybe. Yeah.
Tim says canceled. He's not having the guy on. I do not, and there's not an ounce in me that blames Tim. He says canceled. This morning we received lawyers. Note, yada, yada. The notice is attached. Under advisement of counsel, we will not host him on IRL and must advise, do not follow him or read what he is saying. There's a little tongue in cheek there. When Tim's lawyers say, don't have him on, I don't know how Tim could then do it. And if he gets sued, say, I defied reliance of counsel and had him on anyhow. But Robert, do tell. I mean, to me, it sounds a little absurd. Like if you have someone on to actively participate in the defamatory statements, I can understand that. I mean, you're sort of making them yourselves. If you have on somebody to challenge, to let them speak, I mean, giving someone a bullhorn to make, even if they are allegedly defamatory statements, incur the liability of the person who gave the bullhorn, that seems questionable to me. And then there was a third thing. But what is the state of the law in terms of what they alleged to Tim Poole?
I mean, merely platforming him means nothing. They need to have deliberate intent and knowledge to have that opinion be their own. And if it's not their own opinion, that's why, remember, you see those TV shows and documentaries where at the beginning and the end, they'll have the opinions expressed herein are solely the opinions of the individual giving it. It is not the opinion of the broadcast network. That's what that exculpatory clause is meant. You can do that and say the same thing at the beginning and end of each show and make that clear that whatever anybody states is their personal opinion. We have not vetted it. We cannot vouch for it. We are not speaking for it. It is not the opinion of the network or the broadcast or anyone else on the broadcast. It is solely and wholly the opinion of the other individual. And that is easily established enough. But I think Tim Poole has lawyers with the same backbone as him.
No, I don't blame him. And sometimes avoiding a lawsuit, avoiding a headache is, the ultimate gift. But the question I had is whether or not this guy, the letter from the lawyers says Turtle Boy is a liar. making objective defamatory statements. I don't know that there's been a finding of that yet. And there was another video that I saw of someone saying, well, now Turtle Boy can sue the lawyers personally because they're making defamatory statements. To me, the lawyers effectively, I mean, I appreciate it's not, it feels like tortious interference, because what they are basically saying, the underlying tort is making a defamatory statement that is not necessarily legally substantiated of Turtle Boy to interfere with his contracts, for lack of a better word, and to get his opportunities to, speak his mind curtailed because of their threats to third parties to platform him.
Well,
do you think
that's a perfect transition into the other libel case we had this week involving a famed music composer for movies and shows about whether or not litigation letters like that one are the basis of a libel suit themselves?
This is, I mean, just so everybody knows, Barnes is not dodging the question. This lawsuit answers the question because this is Danny Elfman. It's funny. Okay, so I know him. He did the music for Men in Black.
Big movies.
Well, yeah, Men in Black, but he also did the opening music for The Simpsons. I mean, I'm not. Yeah,
yeah, right. Man, that dude has got some serious cash. I guess he decided to spend it in some fun ways.
So everybody understands Danny Elfman was accused of sexual misconduct with a woman. I forget her name. It doesn't really matter. He settled the lawsuit. Just refresh me if I'm getting mistaken on the facts.
There was a potential lawsuit that was never filed that he settled, and then never made full payment on, and then another lawsuit happened after that.
And then he was accused of sexual misconduct with a woman. Her name doesn't really matter. He denied it. He said anything was sort of consensual if there was anything, but it was, denied being. I think he said she submitted to a nude photo shoot or something consensually.
She demanded it of him. He was like, no, don't make me do it. Don't make me do it. But she did.
And this is Danny Elfman, composer, Men in Black, Simpsons guy. He defaults on the payment of the settlement allegedly. Then there's a lawsuit filed. Then there's an article in Rolling Stone. There's an article in some magazine, and he says that he basically denies the wrongdoing and says that she's a liar.
And that she's trying to do a money grab, destroy his marriage, made a lot of other statements, though it was sent as a personal confident, unlike this Kossoff letter. It had, at the top, it had personal, confidential, not for publication. But then later on, they authorized the statements in there for publication, all of which would become factors in how it is he got sued for what he sent to the Rolling Stone.
Yeah, and so he got sued for defamation. He filed an anti-SLAPP to dismiss it, and they said, no, some of these claims are going to stand. You'll have to defend against them. When you called her a liar, that's a verifiable statement of fact. And so that precedent seems to lend credibility to the idea that Turtle Boy could sue these lawyers, or maybe the client, if he wants to claim that, or all of them, for having called him a liar as a demonstrable statement of fact that is as of yet, I think, unproven. But so Danny Elfman, meanwhile, keep your fucking schmeckles in your pants. Don't get into consensual nudes when you're married. What did you think was going to happen, Danny? So anyways, he's being sued now. A few of the claims for defamation survived the motion to dismiss, and he's going to be screwed. And he didn't even get screwed, apparently, or maybe there was some screwy.
I'll leave that for you can read the details of what happened or didn't happen. So why didn't he have a litigation privilege, which relates to the Kossoff letter question as well in the Turtle Boy Tim Pool case? And why was there no exculpatory no self-defense? So under the restatement of torts, that if you have a right as part of what's considered like self-defense in the defamation context, just like, for example, you normally can't punch somebody. But if you're punching them because you believe, and it is objectively true from a reasonable person perspective, that you had to punch them to defend some significant, great bodily interest of your own, then it's legal to punch somebody. Same way, it's legal to even libel somebody if it's part of your self-defense of protecting your reputation is necessary to do so. This is sometimes colloquially called in the law the exculpatory no defense. And here, that was one of his potential defenses. The same as you have a litigation privilege, which if you communicate something in anticipation of litigation, you have a privilege from that correspondence, document, etc., being used as evidence against you. Sometimes in the executive branch, they assert litigation privilege as a way to defend against disclosing information either under FOIA or in criminal cases or civil cases. They say it's part of in anticipation of litigation. We did this work, or we did this interview, or we sent that correspondence. Normally, there's no attorney-client privilege or duty of confidentiality privilege because this was a statement made to an adverse party who was not the client of the lawyer. But there is a potential litigation privilege, which is very broad and robust under California law. Another a privilege that exists is if you say something inside a court case, then it is completely privileged from libel. For example, I knew this lawyer many years ago who kept accusing, this is to troll the chat, kept accusing the other party who was connected to Bill Clinton of having Mossad get people murdered for him. This man was a Haim Saban, big billionaire, and this lawyer kept saying this in court. And so a range of nationwide, national, and global journalists put it in press and put it in publication. This billionaire, Haim Saban, got enraged, the biggest donor of the Democratic Party in American history, but also tight ties with Miriam Adelson and the Israel lobby. He connected to a wide range of big, high-profile Univision. He's the leading owner of, et cetera. And it drove him crazy that these publications could repeat this, and it was all because this lawyer kept saying it in court. People can look up who the lawyer might have been. The lawyer might have hypothetically ran into him, Haim Saban, one day at Melisse restaurant in Santa Monica. Said, "Man, these lawyers get away with everything, don't they?" So the question of why no litigation privilege? Well, here's the exception. If it is considered a press release, if it is for a third-party publication to the world, then it is considered not in anticipation of litigation. That you didn't do that, make that statement in anticipation of filing litigation. You made that statement to get out to the world a certain defense or idea or factual or other claim. And consequently, they said there is no litigation privilege here because you authorized Rolling Stone to publish it. Mm-hmm. And then last but not least, why wasn't it somehow within the exculpatory? No. The reason is because he went beyond saying no. He could have just said, I didn't do it. She's a liar about saying I did it. All of that, okay. But when you extrapolate, when you say, this was a money grab, her motivation was this, she did this, she initiated that, they kept saying he went way beyond the exculpatory no. So then in that case, there isn't the self-defense exculpatory no defense, and he is liable for making these statements like money grab going beyond it. So it's a test case in how not to write a litigation demand letter, though one could argue Kossoff made that mistake times two, is they didn't even put it at the top, not for publication. Clearly, they wanted this letter being circulated by Tim Pool. They could have said you have no authorization to republish this to anybody in the public. If they had said as much, then they could still argue it was within the litigation privilege. So they're in Massachusetts, Tim Pool in West Virginia. And so the California the litigation privilege recognized in California is not universally recognized. So you look at how they frame this and phrase this. And my view is that like these certain sections redacted, et cetera, addresses and the like. Well, I think that Turtle Boy does have a cognizable claim against both the law firm and the individuals they're representing as their authorized representatives under agency principle to sue them for libel and defamation. No, maybe that'll be a Nick Rekieta special because he's been covering the Turtle Boy case this week.
Yeah, I think he had Turtle Boy on afterwards. I want to just show you one thing. We're looking at the document, right? And again, you gotta be careful because you can't see everything. I was shocked that it didn't even say private and confidential unless
they wanted this released.
Yeah,
they
wanted
this
recirculated.
And they knew who's a big enough wuss to do it. Maybe Tim Pool. Just like.
I don't think Tim Pool is a wuss for not doing that. I think he probably saved himself a headache. But I want to Carney's conduct was not solely defamatory. It was also criminal. He has been indicted on a series of witnesses. First of all, indicted doesn't mean convicted. So until he's convicted, he's not a criminal. Those charges are pending. Indeed, they're calling him a criminal, which is a statement of fact, which seems to be factually incorrect because he hasn't been convicted yet. You're not a criminal by virtue of being indicted. Yeah, but I tend to agree with you, Robert. I read this like, holy shit, this looks like tortious interference. It looks like they're the ones that defaming him. And maybe it said privileged and confidential underneath the redacted section, but it usually says it, like on the upper right so that nobody misses it. Yeah, Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Robert, let me bring one up here because we saw.
By the way, we do have one more little libel case before we proceed to SCOTUS and recusal rights and judicial corruption and election integrity orders and Second Amendment challenges. There's one that the libel case that was almost a libel case a couple of months ago, and the same culprit keeps coming back for more. And looks like he wants to be sued for libel again.
Oh my goodness, Luongo. Let me bring up the tweet. Robert, he's lost his fucking mind. I mean, I was like, I saw again. This is another guy.
No, Viva, we're just all captured by the city of London. We're getting the secret payments. It's coming through the mullahs. It's going back through Mossad. And then it goes up through Moscow before it gets to us. We're all part of the secret city of London conspiracy to promote the Iranian government.
Some people might not remember who Tom Luongo. It is Tom Luongo, right?
Tom Luongo, yeah. Usually people just don't pronounce the U.
Well, but no, the other thing is I get mixed up between that name and Tom DeLonge, who's the he's in Blink 182. I forget if he's the singer. Set that aside. Tom Luongo has been on the channel. He came off as a very reasonable, knowledgeable person. Is he involved in the administration now in any capacity? I thought.
No.
Okay. And so what does he do? He's a financial guy.
He's a commentator, financial analyst, I don't know if he has a professional advisory role, but historically he's sort of an independent, dissident, libertarian guy that we might have had disagreements in the past, but got along with. But he's gone all in. He's, attacks Marjorie Taylor Greene regularly. Here's Mr. Libertarian attacks Thomas Massie, the most libertarian-oriented member of Congress. Is all in on that world. And he keeps doubling down. And he falsely accused me of being in the Epstein files and it's some sort of a pernicious.
That's what. Oh my goodness! And then I did put it on blast, and he did apologize and said he overstated it because you were in. Yeah, you're named in it, Robert, 8 times because there was article links to the Washington Post and some of the cases you've been involved in. So he walked that one back. Then he comes out, and I'm not trying to. I feel bad, like, dude. All you have to do is delete and apologize. We're not there yet. In respect of Richard Barris, who says, I don't care about the midterms, should never be uttered. I brought it up. Okay, good. It says, her face right now. Oh, no. Okay, whatever. But as far as the rest, what else is he going to say at this point? Primaries aren't generals, for the record. This is about Trump saying, I don't care about the midterms. Well, my 118 of 118 have gotten, my picks have passed the primaries. Primaries are not generals or general midterms. Luongo says, in respect of Rich Barris, this pathetic loser continues to run the grift that 1, he actually polls real people, and 2, he has an accurate view of anything. This, I presume, Robert, is suggesting that Barris, a pollster, doesn't poll real people is a very, very, it's not a joke. It's a very serious thing. To which you say, this is defamation, retract ASAP. To which he says, happily, I do not care about this, Robert. So when does Barris release his actual polling to us to see? You release it. He says, fair. I will retract and delete the tweet. Happy? Robert, I don't know how
it's still there. It's like, Tom, did you lose the delete button? Did you forget where it missed it? Did the city of London trick you and deceive you and to prevent you from learning where it's at? Because isn't it still there? You keep saying, I'm going to retract. Okay, please just retract, Tom. Because this is a new conspiracy theory. So Richard Barris, for those that don't know, big data polling, the most accurate pollster in the country since 2014.
Yeah, he missed Massie. He said Massie +1 within the margin of error.
In the primaries. Yeah, in primary electorates, notoriously difficult to poll and survey. But general election polls, and by the way, the same pollsters that had Massie down 6 or 7 had Massie up 8 in a prior poll. So it's just the nature, because you don't know who's going to vote. And guessing, you're basically like people have asked me what's going to happen to the California primary. I said, I think Steyer will make the runoff, but it is very, very hard to know who's going to vote in a primary. General elections are a very different animal. So in the general elections in 2014, 2016, 2018, 2020, 2022, 2024, the most accurate pollster in the country consistently was Richard Barris. And he took a lot of heat for it. He was attacked by all the polling gatekeepers, attacked by the institutional media, attacked by the partisan pollsters, prohibited from working in general election campaigns in often because he would be independent. He'd be honest. He would not print in a dishonest poll. Didn't matter whether whoever paid him, even for the poll, he wouldn't publish any information that was inaccurate or dishonest, period. He recently outed the effort of a rogue element within the administration to push through mass amnesty that was actually going to be pushed by a range of members of Congress, including Republicans. Over 20 of them had signed on. The reason why it didn't happen is Richard Barris blew up that they had misused and abused and incorrectly reported his polling data concerning a project they had paid him for because they thought his opinion was for sale when it never is. So that's who Barris is. He's very diligent, very thorough. Polling is both an art and a science in the modern era because it's very difficult to reach a representative group that where one person represents the opinions of 100,000, because that's what you're doing when you're trying to talk to 3,000 people and get the opinions of 300 million people. You're trying to get it in such an artistic and scientific way that it accurately represents the broader neighborhood, the broader community, the broader constituency that they communicate. So he is also the most transparent pollster in the country. If you go to Big Data Poll, you can go down, you can look up the interactive crosstabs. You can go through and do the different analysis of this group versus that group, this question versus that question, and you can see what everybody within age groups, religious groups, ethnic groups, racial identification, partisan identification, ideological identification, marital status, wide range of unique data sets that he alone captures and collects and reports. And so here the most transparent, and what it is, he's just been reporting since last summer that the combination of the Epstein files and Iran war would crack the foundation of Trump's 2024 coalition and do severe damage in the buildup to the midterms in 2026 and potentially even advance or Rubio or other Republican contestant in 2028. And ever since he's been reporting that, these people have not wanted that to be true. They've wanted the opposite to be true. And so even though they claim to be coming to follow and watch and monitor and report Barris's data because of his high record of transparency and accuracy and independence, and he believes in the old George Gallup tradition that that there's a duty and obligation of public opinion pollsters to report what the American people really think, because it's the only way their opinions get adequately represented and reflected before the decision makers. Barris has always taken that very principle to heart. So much so that he advances positions on what the American people are saying that he doesn't share or agree with. Doesn't share or agree with certain attitudes they have on healthcare. Doesn't share or agree with certain attitudes they have on, on foreign policy objectives, particularly in Latin and Central America. But he will represent, here's what they think, and here's how they will react to a particular policy, prescription, or proposal, or enactment. And ever since then, there's been a whole group of people online that have been libeling him on a regular basis, pretending that he doesn't really. There's a whole bunch of fake pollsters out there that pretend to be polling that are not. And they accuse Barris of doing what they're doing. There's also a bunch of pollsters who've been bought off by intimidation or just flat out cash, including or the risk of being rejected publicly by the Trump cult. And again, that's not all Trump supporters. I'm referring to that subcategory of Trump supporters that Trump can do no wrong. And if you say anything that Trump disagrees with, then you're suddenly evil, persona non grata, and must be burned at the stake publicly as quickly as possible. That when I refer to the Trump tards, I'm referring to that dear leader subcult of the Trump world, not the average, ordinary, everyday Trump supporter. To be clear. So, but that world, that dear leader cult world, has been systematically libeling Barris on a daily basis. And now Tom Longo just decided to lend his name to it. And that's why I told Tom, retract, it's wrong. And he was like, well, I didn't even know that Barris had published. I was like, well, then you shouldn't have made a statement that you should have known was false. Now he does know it's false. He's admitted he should retract it. I've given him the link that proves it's false, and he's still slow to retract it. So, Tom, put down the good cigar and retract, so that you don't get sued.
And I just had to double check as far as Grok says, no, Tom Luongo has not deleted or retracted the original tweet. He said he would do it, but he hasn't followed through, at least not yet.
Correct. Yeah. Come on. And everybody else out there is a newsflash. There's people out there trying to systematically lie, a wide range of people giving their independent opinion, whether it's Chase Hughes talking about PSYOPs and exposing how PSYOPs work, or a range of other people that are subject to repeated and routine libels because they're not part of the dear leader cult. And everybody out there, I get you have the losers and the half-wits, nitwits, midwits, and trolls. But if you have any kind of substantial public account, like a Tom Longo, and you repeat these lies and libels, you will be sued. There's a talk radio host in Virginia that pretended that Barris created fake polls in Virginia to show something when he was the one who outed the fake polls, never did them. That person's going to get sued. They're all going to get sued unless they start learning their lesson, because people like Barris and people like Chase Hughes and others have reached their limit on these people who think they can get away with these sort of systematic and systemic libels. They can't. They won't. And there'll be consequences for them if they keep doing it.
No, they think it's the internet. They think it's funny. Robert Dixie says, to say Tim Pool has no backbone is a bit unfair, don't you think? I think you're being hyperbolic. I think it isn't. Tim Pool does have a backbone.
That's true. You have to have a spine in the first place to have a backbone. That's a fair point.
Okay. And I think Tim has made a wise decision here to do something out of principle that's going to just...
Yes, it's proof. We can totally disagree without disowning one another.
No, and I think Tim's done... people call him a fence sitter. I don't find he's that much of a fence sitter. I mean, it's almost become like an internet meme. I don't find him a fence sitter at all. He tries to steal, man. But anyhow, all that to say, thank you.
He is funny as a troll. Now he uses XFeed half the time as a troll account. I think he's mastered.
He's definitely leaning into that. I don't like that, because then the trolls.
You don't know what's real.
You don't know what's real anymore. I don't like April Fool's jokes. King of Biltong says, we are still driving, so making it easy. Viva and Barnes, no good Biltong, and so should you. BiltongUSA.com. Code Barnes for 10% off. Get some. I was eating the Wagyu peri peri before going live. It was quite spicy, Anton. Deliciously spicy. Robert, okay, so what do we do now? We got a few more. We got to take the party over.
We got SCOTUS. We've got recusal rights. We've got a big election order of the president upheld, and a Second Amendment challenge in Virginia. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 topics left to cover tonight. We'll cover 3 here and 3 in the hopefully still live after party.
That's what I'm getting nervous, Robert. Okay, if it crashes, everybody, I will kick up a new stream immediately. It'll be easy. I'm just going to use Rumble Studio again. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. They fixed it. Let's see. What do we want to go with here? Let's do the SCOTUS ones here, because people want to know what's coming up, what isn't coming up. Did we mention what was still on the table in terms of not adjudicated in this session yet?
Yeah, no. So we've got, there's opinion set to be authored June 4th. June is their last month that they're active. They go on vacation July, August, and most of September. It's hard work being a Supreme Court justice. They only got to take 50, 60 cases a year, and then they still need 3 months off.
We got to pack that court, Robert. They need more justices. Let's add.
You can hear those Democrats already. Maybe 4, maybe 7, maybe 9. Who knows how many you'll end up being? But they've got 26 cases they're still sitting on. Usually it's like 8 or 9 by this point, to just wrapping up the final big cases of the year. I can't imagine they're going to issue all 26 on June 4th. So I'm assuming there'll be some new opinion days announced in June.
Well, hold on. Do you not, to get conspiratorial, do you not think that maybe there's a couple of really bad ones in there that they just want to drown out and make it impossible for people to digest 26 decisions?
That's possible. It's also possible that they're deeply split and can't get to a final vote. I would say the latter is a substantial part of it, just because of the number. But you have it. Speaking of, here's the dozen or so big ones that everybody's kind of paying attention to. Birthright citizenship they're yet to issue an opinion on that. Whether voting day, election day is election day or days and weeks, yet to issue a decision on that. Whether or not the president has power to fire his own executive branch officials, well, at the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, or the Fed. What is agency power in general? Continuing to implement various aspects of the Chevron doctrine. What about trans rights? What about trans in schools? Do they have federally protected constitutional rights, federally protected civil rights? Or can communities say that men should not be participating in women's sports and going into women's restrooms and women's locker rooms? All of those cultural cases yet to be determined on constitutional and statutory grounds. Whether or not campaign financing can coordinate with a range of PACs and candidates. A variation of the Citizens United case that goes a step further and says whether or not there could be unfettered finance coordination between big donors and ordinary campaigns, which currently is difficult to officially do. Whether or not the religious charter schools, what are their rights against state imposition and intrusion in the First Amendment context? What about age verification rules as it relates to free speech and social media access? And whether some of these things are in fact ways of stripping people of their anonymity to control their accessibility to the would-be surveillance state and social media and financial credit. Whether buyer has federal preemption and thus is immune from liability from state tort actions based on its contamination of local food supplies and of cancerous effects on the farm workers that get near it and others that consume their products. Whether or not, and that's the case of the glyphosate case, whether or not the Second Amendment prohibits treating as a felony simply owning a gun because you previously smoked a little weed. That's before the Supreme Court of the United States. So that's just about the dozen or so big consequential cases that will be coming down maybe as early as Thursday, but will be issued sometime this month.
All right. That's a whole hell of a lot of big. I'm the most interested in birthright citizenship. I think a bunch of the other ones are going to be. What did we say?
The TPS immigration cases are also up. What authority does the president have to really enforce our immigration laws?
Geez, that was the temporary protected status where you issue the protection, but you can't revoke or rescind the protection. Okay, well, we got one hell of a week, Robert. Next week's episode might be 7 hours
probably
long.
A SCOTUS and more SCOTUS. But speaking of SCOTUS, they did issue 2 decisions this week on racial discrimination in jury selection and on arbitration in the Interstate Commerce Clause.
And I'm going to let you field those for reasons that are obvious.
So the first one we discussed before, I think it was a Mississippi case where prosecutors struck 4 of the 5 black jurors. Like, nope. And so the defense was like, hold on a second, you're getting rid of all the black people. Kind of like they did in the Wesley Snipes jury, as the New York Reporter later said, because that weekend there had been a huge NFL conference game, championship game between the Green Bay Packers and the New York Giants. And they said the Wesley Snipes jury pool, and so it was like a snow out that happened there in Green Bay. And they said that the Wesley Snipes jury pool looked like the Green Bay Giants game. It was all white in there. Similar to what this prosecutor was doing. And then here's the legal standard under Batson, a Supreme Court decision, says the government cannot discriminate in who gets to sit on a jury. And so the Batson process is if somebody is struck and that one of the other lawyers thinks that the other side did it for racially discriminatory purposes because of the role of the judicial government part of government, branch of government in enforcing that, it's considered state action, whether or not a private lawyer does it, public defender does it, or the prosecution does it. So either side could say, hold on a second, judge, I think they struck that person for racial reasons. Mm-hmm. Then the other side is to say, no, here's what my reason is, and it's not racial. And then the other lawyer gets to say, that's pretextual. Here's why we know it's pretextual. Well, that third part wasn't happening in some of these cases. That they would say, I think that's biased. The other side would say, no, here's why it's not biased. They would never allow the pretextual retort to take place. Same sort of burden-shifting process takes place in a wide range of civil rights cases dating back to McDonald and some other cases. And so the Supreme Court ruled 5-4 because there was a procedural issue before this. Now, here's where I disagree with Gorsuch and Thomas and Alito and Barrett. Frankly, it's unsurprising that they don't have a ton of sympathy for criminal defendants. I think that tends to animate some of these decisions. I don't think it's strictly statutory interpretation or constitutional construction they're always involved in, because whenever it involves perceived criminals' rights, they seem to kind of forget that constitutional commitment, in my experience. But the Roberts and Kavanaugh wrote the opinion, joined the 3 liberals. And the argument was clearly you're violating, and here's what they would do. They love to do this. In any court case you're ever involved in, unless you scream preservation, or whatever objection you're making, when you get up on appeal, the appeals courts go, you didn't, everything was waived. You didn't object. And of course, you hate doing it at the trial court level because the judges will be mad at you. They'll be irritable. Why do you keep interrupting the proceedings? Why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep, and your client doesn't want you to upset the local judge. So you're under this constant pressure to not be a whiner, preserve. But if you deal with the appeals, the appeals courts love to pretend waiver when there is no waiver. They claim waiver when they know that the judge screwed up, but it screwed up on behalf of the kind of party, corporations or big government, that they like and they want to protect and defend. And so consequently, they say, well, you're probably right, that was illegal, but it was waived. So that's what the lower courts were all doing. The Supreme Court was like, that wasn't waiver. They stopped him from being able to do the third stage of the process. So what was the dissent? The dissent didn't talk about the merits much. It said, we don't like the procedure by which this got here. And their argument was the habeas statutes passed by Congress restrict the constitutional requirement to protect the writ of habeas corpus. I've always disagreed with that premise in this first analysis. And that in the name of deference to state courts and trial courts, appellate courts and federal courts should have very limited discretion about what they second guess. And so they're like, it's not our role to even second guess this in the first place because the habeas statutes passed by Congress restrict our role of review. To me, that's unconstitutional in violation of the right to protect the writ of habeas corpus. But it's where a lot of conservative jurists have come down. But I think ultimately here, fortunately, 5-4, the Supreme Court ruled you can't engage in this discrimination. And that habeas restriction did not prohibit the Supreme Court from adjudicating that constitutional question.
All right, very interesting. I know the chat, but we should do this one with everybody before we go over to Rumble Premium and Viva Barnes Law. First of all, Robert, what do you have coming up this week, and where can people find you?
So I've been on with Mario Knopfel. Was on with him again earlier today. Was on with him twice.
He got in trouble, right? Because he posted something that Elon did that was inaccurate about Elon, and then Elon unfollowed him. Did you hear that?
I saw that, but he mostly puts positive stuff up there about Elon. But but I did see something about Elon not following him, so I don't know what that was about. But so it was on with him today, and then twice last week. Was on with Dialogue Works last week. We'll be on Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time for the June edition of What Are the Odds with Richard Barris, People's Pundit Daily on Locals, YouTube, Rumble, and X, and Getter. And we'll be going through a deep dive I produced my Senate predictions report up at sportspicks.locals.com that goes through every single Senate seat and the probabilities, I think, in 2026. It will either go to the Democrat, the Republican, or another independent or third-party candidate, what I felt those odds should be, and people compare that to what the odds are. We'll be going into the Senate and other aspects on the What Are the Odds with Richard Barris on Monday. Then on Tuesday and Wednesday, there'll be live Bourbons with Barnes at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Currently have a hush-hush there on weather weapons.
Weather control.
Yeah, how they're weaponizing the weather. So we'll have another hush-hush in a Barnes Law School on the utility and benefit of having a little crypto, where and how you should store that crypto. But one of the cool intermediary tools for getting crypto is Rumble Wallet. And we'll be doing a little Barnes Law School class on that. There'll be daily Barnes briefs up at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. A busy week in this early summer.
Well,
as we are only about 10 days away from the World Cup, starting here in the United States of America and in Canada and Mexico.
Who follows the World Cup, Robert? While you mentioned Rumble Wallet, if you want a tip, by the way, using crypto, and you see, download Rumble Wallet, download the Rumble app so you get real-time notification when your favorite creators go live. You click on the tip thing. You can go with another wallet, and all you do, by the way, is you scan this QR code and tip with crypto, with Bitcoin. And if you want to tip with gold backed because of Tether's partnership with Rumble, you can go XAUT, gold backed crypto. It literally tethered dollar for dollar. You can go redeem your digital asset with real gold in Switzerland if you so choose. Scan those QR codes and you can tip your favorite creators whatever you want. I'll be live daily, same old stuff. I'll see who's coming up when. I don't know if there's anything unique coming up this week. I just know that the kids are off school now. So,
well, just a potentially big SCOTUS on Thursday.
Yeah,
so that might have birthright citizenship, immigration enforcement, federal Humphrey's executor, whether the presidency really controls the executive branch, is election day. So we've got one SCOTUS case, recusal rights, California courts, Trump's executive order on elections, and Second Amendment challenges left to be covered. The one other thing to broadcast is there are still limited tickets available for 1776lawcenter.com National Conference, our annual conference, supporting food freedom, medical freedom, financial freedom, and political freedom. Guests include Alexander McCorris, flying in from the UK, Alex Christoforou, flying in from Cyprus, Larry Johnson, coming up from Florida, Daniel Davis, coming down from Virginia, Richard Barris, coming in from North Carolina, Chase Hughes, coming in from, along with Scott Rouse and The Greg Hartley coming in from all parts of the country as part of the behavior panel. State Representative Michelle Renaud on Maha. And a new addition, Jim Webb, the former military analyst and national security advisor to the Robert Kennedy presidential campaign of 2024, says he's coming. And there's some big invites to some surprise guests. August 1st, August 2nd, Chattanooga, Tennessee. Tickets are limited. They're capped. When they run out, they're gone. And available at 1776lawcenter.com.
I just got another. We see when they came in here, it says, Viva, don't lose that 10. I was at the beach all day today, doing some work on the beach. Tropical rocket. All right, so Robert, let's do the Second Amendment one here, and then we'll do the rest over at Viva Barnes Law. This is coming out of the district, the court, Virginia, Lynchburg, Virginia, and it's an order to show cause, which is basically they want to hold, who is the guy? What's his position? Katz. It is superintendent of Virginia State Police. They want to hold this guy Katz in contempt because what Virginia did is it passed a law or a resolution that required universal background checks. If you wanted to buy a firearm, they took it to court, and a court issued an injunction prohibiting the state police force from doing these universal background checks because it's a violation of Second Amendment rights. What Virginia did is they passed a second resolution, which they said, was slightly modified from the original resolution for which there was an injunction enjoining application of this resolution, which was background checks or universal background checks. And they adopted the very same conduct that was enjoined in the original injunction on the basis that they passed a new resolution. It was a little bit different. And so therefore they no longer have to abide by the injunction, or the injunction issued in the court case doesn't apply to the new resolution, bill, whatever the hell it was, that is slightly changed. They said, I'm pretty sure it's well-established case law. You don't get to bypass an injunction simply by, passing a new resolution that might be somewhat different. And they want to hold the superintendent of the police force in contempt for willfully violating an order of the court, which was to not violate their Second Amendment rights. That's a fair summary. There's been no order on this, right? They haven't adjudicated on whether or not they're going to issue the order to show cause, or if they bring him in, he's going to have to defend why he should not be held in contempt.
Not yet, not that I'm aware of. And then the only other question is if that procedural technique is not approved of by the court, that they simply seek a new injunction of the new statute, because the new statute is, in its constitutionally offending components, the same as the old statute. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. The CIA Spanberger got to take over the state of Virginia. She's been running roughshod over any constitutional rights or liberties she sees in her way. And one of them is the people's Second Amendment rights, even though a Virginia state court had enjoined a predecessor near identical statute saying you cannot constitutionally impose a complete background check on the private sales that are done between individuals that are outside of the commercial sale context, because nothing like that existed at the time of our Constitution's founding and origination, nor did it exist at the time that the 14th Amendment was passed, that is governing states under the federal Constitution. And then there's additional problems with the way they passed this legislation, because it didn't meet the 4/5 standards required for it to pass through emergency legislation protocols that they used to push this through in the first place. So it's a multi-level violation of both the Virginia state constitution and the United States Constitution. And consequently, this state court should find the officers in contempt. They partially recognize that in filing their own petition to the court at the outset, saying that there's a new law passed, but we're not sure this changes the court's injunction. And yet then they pretended, because the court hadn't immediately rushed in to take action, though it had taken no action in their favor, that they could just ignore the prior court order and start telling people they can't do private sales without going through a special background check to make sure the surveillance state control grid is in constant control of your Second Amendment rights in ways that are restrictive of your core constitutional liberties. So I think the Virginia court will ultimately either find the individual in contempt or get the state to concede they cannot enforce its new law, because you can't override an old unconstitutional law by writing a new law that has the same constitutionally offending principles in it.
Well, hopefully they'll do it. Now, Robert, I don't know if you can see the glistening sweat on my forehead. This is the moment of truth, people. I'm going to update.
Did you know that is this like, apparently when you see like all the dew on a freshly morning in the grass, that's not usually dew. That's like thousands of tiny little spiders.
I've
Have
been
you heard
drinking-
this?
I've been drinking that stuff for the longest time, Robert. I roll it. No, I'm joking. I haven't heard that. I'm going to fact check that in a second. On the flip side, everybody come on over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com. We're going to read all of the tipped questions over there. And if it crashes, we're going to kick up a stream within 3 minutes. I'm just going to go. We're in studio. We're going to kick it up. I've been told it's going to work. We're updating it, people.
Yeah. We got
Go for it.
Oh, we've got SCOTUS arbitration and the Interstate Commerce Clause. We've got right to recuse judges in California. And we've got Trump's big election order. Was it upheld about mail-in balloting and citizenship requirements? That will be all at the after party at vivabarneslaw.locals.com.
That and all of the tipped questions. We're rating whatever. And someone's opening the door. We're still live. What do you want?
Can I come on?
Yeah, the kid wants to come on right before we do it. What happened?
Can I say hi?
Yeah, come say hi. Come say hi.
Hi.
The kid says hi. We haven't even rated over yet. Okay, get out of here. Oh, the dogs. And now you're going to hear dogs fighting people. All right, while we do this, we're going to do it. We're updating the stream. If it crashes, we're going to set it up again right away.